I believe so.
Man, they're good ones.
Get right under here. Yep. And then we need.
Good morning. We'd like to go ahead and get started. Before I turn it over to Joseph Grenny, our chair of the Other Side Academy and Other Side Village, I want to do some housekeeping. Again, bathrooms behind here. We have exits here and out that door. We're passing around lists. Can I show this up? We can only accommodate about 25 people for our breakthrough groups tonight. We had 60 sign up, so if it's really important for you to be at the break group through, we want to try to accommodate you. It's also at the same time as our visit to Red Barn. So if you really want to see another therapeutic community, that would be a great opportunity. And so we're going to pass this around, see if you want to go to the Red Barn, maybe you signed up for the breakthrough, but you want to really see another, sign up here, and then we'll see how many left and if we can accommodate everyone. If we can, if there's still more than 25, we'll go by who RSVP'd first to try to fit that. Does that seem fair? Okay. And
We will provide rides to and from Red Barn. We'll leave here at 5 right when we're done. Holiday. We'll leave at 5 and
and we appreciate Red Barn for the hospitality. One of their social enterprises is some delicious fried chicken wing stuff, sticky birds.
But they do have vegan and vegetarian options.
Yeah. So we'll be passing this list around for a visit. Also, we've got posted the schedule. It's on this back pillar. If any of you don't have the electronic copy of it, you can see the day's events. We'll have a break at 11, and then we'll have lunch at noon, and we'll finish up here around 5 p.m. today. Thank you very much, and I'll turn the time over to, also if you haven't filled out and put your name, we've got some lanyards and name tags back here, so we can all know who everyone else is, and I'll turn it over to Joseph.
Good morning.
So join with me one more time. Yesterday night, we got a virtuoso lesson from George, and please thank him with me too. He was like on last night, and I don't know about you, but there were so many insights and connections and things I want to continue to reflect on. One of the ways I know we disappointed him is he's sincere when he asks for feedback, and I think we sucked at that, so let's keep at it. And we have had conversations. Every time I think we've had George on campus, he ends by saying, give me feedback. What was helpful, what was not for you in this? And I want to urge you as you're here to treat the Other Side Academy the same way. We're going to have a chance to share some of our point of view, but we expect feedback also. Our goal is not to be praised, but to improve. And so please take us at our word for that, and we'd love to have that same kind of exchange with you. So good morning. We've got a really full day. And what I want to do is make sure that we know who all's in the room and what our expectations are. So we're going to have a representative from each of our organizations talk about who they are and what they want. And I think some have a little bit to share as well on a slide. Is that right? So why don't we start with, is Tosa up first? All right. And are you doing that, or Dave is? Okay. So why don't we have Dave go last? So we'll start with our friends from TROSA. So who's going to represent TROSA? Come on up. Let's give Pierre a welcome.
Good morning, everybody. So I guess I'm the icebreaker, right? The first one. So I'm Pierre with TROSA. Been with TROSA now almost 22 years. And so welcome to TROSA. Next slide. So what is TROSA? We were established in 1994 in Durham, North Carolina. We're structured as a multi-year program for individuals struggling with substance use disorders, providing the following at no cost to the individual: housing, food, clothing. We offer health care, mental health services, vocational and life skills training. TROSA currently has 2 locations in North Carolina. Durham, we have 320 men and 80 women. In our Winston-Salem facility that we just opened in April, we have 30 men. We just got our waiver, so hopefully that number is getting ready to go up. Of TROSA's 430 plus residents, approximately 75 are postgraduates that's chosen to stay on. TROSA currently has 80 staff members, and over 70% of them are graduates of the program. Next slide. Who we serve: 87% are uninsured without Medicaid, 86% have been incarcerated, 69% have felony arrests, 26% no high school diploma or GED, which is one of our requirements, is that they enroll. If they don't have one of those, they enroll in it. 43% report being homeless prior to TROSA and or anticipate homelessness if not accepted in the program. 99% of our 2021-22 graduates obtained employment by program completion.
99%. Who's the one guy?
It was just one guy. I think he was a guy that chose to just leave. Yeah. 96% of the prior year graduates were in recovery and remained employed 1 year after completing the program. 98% of prior year graduates had no new criminal convictions 1 year after completing the program. Sure.
We just want to introduce one of the people in the picture there, the far right.
Wait. Yeah. Right, yeah. That is right. No, he made it. Yeah. So in 2018, a study by RTI found that longer stays at TROSA are associated with fewer arrests, a clear reduction in post-TROSA arrests for residents who stay 12 plus months. Also, I think that study had told us that we were saving the state somewhere around $7 million a year. Something cool we're doing, expansion and consolidation. So the satellite campus that I was just talking about in Winston is located in Winston, 70 miles from Durham. We opened it in April, licensed for 100 people. Phase two construction is currently underway, which will bring our capacity to 220. Our women's campus, we're building housing and community center across the street from the main campus, which that's almost completed. It opened in October of 2020 with the license capacity of 60. So some of them got to stay over on the other side because we don't have a license. Phase two construction is wrapping up, which will bring our capacity to 90 and add a community center by the end of 2023. Actually, I think the community center is probably going to be opening like in October. Yeah. Phase two construction. I just read that. Didn't I? Yeah. Main campus consolidation. We're expanding housing, dining, and meeting space capacity in order to combine two primary men's campuses into a single campus, which is, so we have a house for where the newer people come in, and then once they're there, 6 months, they move over to the main campus. But construction is underway right now so that everybody will be at the main campus. And that's going to be completed by the end of 2024. Hopefully sooner, but construction is something else. And that's TROSA. Oh, I didn't see that slide, my bad. We're always striving to improve our program and outcomes and hope that seeing what is and isn't working for other programs will help. If something we're doing helps another program, then we're helping more people too. That's what we do. That's kind of what we talked about last night. What did you say, vicarious or? Yeah.
Yeah, amen. Thank you.
Triangle residential options. Thank you. Triangle residential options for substance abuse.
Thank you, Pierre. I can tell you, as you watch these slides, I hope what's happening is you're making little connecting points where you want to follow up and have conversations because there's something to learn. Why are they consolidating campuses? Why are the younger students here for 6 months? And there's a lot of depth behind that. And I can tell you also that of all the sister organizations here, TROSA is at the top of the pack in transparency and integrity around these things. They share everything with everyone with the bark on. So, all right, next let's hear from Habilitat. Who do we have from Habilitat? So let's welcome Jeff.
Not gonna lose that, are we? Where are we at? Yep. Aloha, everybody. My name is Jeff Nash. I'm the Executive Director of Habilitat in Hawaii. And Habilitat has been in operation since 1971. A couple of years ago, we celebrated our 50th anniversary. We're now at, I think, 52 years. And we are the largest substance abuse treatment program in the state of Hawaii. What's happening here? Travis, what do we got here? It is, but it didn't all showing. I'm not very good at this, sorry.
Here we go.
Somebody did it fancy? Can I just yeah, there we go. Yeah, thank you. That makes things so much easier.
All right. Thank you, Jeff.
Yes,
You're all
thank
done.
you. Transforming lives since 1971, Habilitat was founded by Vinnie Marino, who had been through Synanon, Daytop, Phoenix House, and decided that he would take what he had learned from those programs, add a little bit of his own, and create Habilitat. Our philosophy is based on the concepts of honesty, integrity, self-discipline, and resilience. We teach our residents a new value system that helps guide them to healthier choices and better decisions and a better life. We have three phases of our program: intensive treatment, reentry, and post-reentry. We also have some elective phases where they can stay extra time if they need to or if they want to. We have 14 different curriculum-based vocational programs that lead to a living wage. Very proud of the fact that since I've been the executive director, 100% of our graduates are employed. In fact, we made it a prerequisite to graduation, so you have to be employed before you can graduate. Typical stay is 24 to 54 months, depending on the individual. Over the last 3 years, we've brought in 224 residents, 50 females, 174 males. This is actually, over the last 3 years, there's been about a 25% decrease due to all the COVID stuff. It got really hard to travel, and we're on an island. 147 residents came directly from incarceration. That was 29 females and 118 males. And in terms of attrition, we broke it down here between 0 and 30 days. We lost 43 people, which is about 19%. Between 31 and 60 days, 17 people, and 61 to 90 days, 12%. Attrition is something that we're continuously working on, trying to retain people. As was mentioned last night, if we can get them through the first few months, typically they start to bite in and things start to change. During that same period, we had 212 residents discharged from the program.
What does discharged mean?
Discharge means graduated, split, terminated, and rare case, and we're going to talk about that now, sometimes medical discharge. So we had ACA, means against clinical authorization. That means that they came to us, they sat down and talked and said, I want to go. We tried to, get them to reason, and they left anyway. CDPPP means clinical discharge pending probationary period. So we have a thing at Habilitat that we do where when they graduate, there is a 6-month probationary period. So a lot of people come to us and they need documentation for the judge to say that they have been clinically discharged. What we found is that if we withhold that for a while and make them go out and practice what it is that they've been taught, remain employed, in stable housing, no drug use, no rearrest, if they can do that for 6 months and withhold the clinical discharge to that period, they tend to do better over time. So that's what CDPPP means. Medical discharge typically means someone has a medical condition that is beyond our ability to care for. We're not a hospital, and we're not a mental health facility. So we do very intense screening, but sometimes people have problems that are beyond our ability to help. Terminated, real simple. We ask them to leave for one reason or another. WCA is another category where they leave without consulting anybody, without clinical authorization. So that was for a 3-year period. Graduates over a 3-year period, 74 graduated the program. 45 of these graduates have continued to abide by all the expectations, and we have some pretty high expectations, and they are considered a full success. 29 graduates have encountered setbacks. 5 were arrested, 1 overdosed and died. 10 of these had 10 of the 29 had a slip up, and were able to get back on their feet. And the remainder of those people are still out there doing what they're doing. Our latest journey, Habilitat is always evolving, adapting to the needs of our community. We're currently working on a transition and long-term supportive housing projects for women and women with children. Hawaii is very expensive to live there. We have a huge homeless population, and there's not enough resources, especially for women with children. So we are looking to purchase an apartment complex and create supportive housing for women with children. Right now we're looking at a 46-unit apartment building, and hopefully by the end of the year that will be secured. No, that's not it. That is a stock photograph, and yes, that would be very nice. You know, median home values in Hawaii are, just for a normal home, is over $1 million. So real estate is a challenge in Hawaii. But we have expanded through the pandemic, and I'll probably talk about that later, but we had to go out and buy 2 transition houses because nobody wanted to rent to our graduates. So we went out and bought houses, and now we have graduate housing. This new endeavor is going to include wraparound services for families, and we have a lot of support from both the government and you know, the senators and all the foundations. What we'd like to do here, well, we want to network with other therapeutic communities. We want to explore new strategies with proven successful results, share our expertise and the success that we've had, and we'd like to remain in contact after. For many, many years, Habilitat kind of operated on an island by itself, literally. And most of the therapeutic communities, we didn't really have much interaction. And one of our graduates, ironically, at one point we had about a third of our population from Utah. And since TOSA opened, we have like maybe a couple. Which is a good thing, actually. But one of our graduates from here came back here, met him before this was opening, and put us in touch. And it has been a really good thing because we share ideas. And I'm hoping that we can develop similar relationships with the rest of you and share ideas. I come here every year. They've been to Habilitat. We learn from each other, and we make each other's organizations even better. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. Next up, we've got, let's see, John Vulcan Academy. Who's representing Vulcan? Great.
Thank you.
Got slides on here.
So, John Vulcan's pretty old school. You know, I'm like, what to expect from this? And he's like, no, you just go up. Hold it real close. You just go up and you share from the heart. So, a little nerve-wracking. I'm the program director in Arizona. I graduated 8 months ago, and yeah, what an honor to be here and represent the organization. I don't have, you know, stats. It's very similar to what, you know, all you guys have going on. Like our students that make it through the first month or two, you know, typically stay to graduate. And I'm fortunate to where I live on site and I'm able to be hands-on and work with the new guys every single day and, you know, just love on them and, you know, exemplify, you know, everything that they can look forward to. Things that I'm proud of. You know, we have volunteers that have been volunteering with us for, you know, 15 years. You know, they come every week. We have a re-entry program. Our education program. So at the year mark, all of our students are required to take classes, and all of them right now have mentors from the outside. So in the career path that they want to go down, and all of our graduates now have found a job in that career path with their mentors. You know, we have a 45-acre ranch. So over the 2 years, they learn how to operate heavy equipment. They learn trades, plumbing, electrical. They learn how to weld. We do rodeos. So, you know, 3-4 nights a week, we do barrel races, ropings, and all the students run it all. So there's 2 graduates that run the program. Sorry, there's 2 graduates that run the program, myself and the ranch manager. something I'm learning or I'm wanting to gain from here is like how to get our students to want to stay on, because they work their butts off, they change their lives in every aspect, from the way they think, the way they feel, the way they talk to people. They become men of integrity, and they go on to have these beautiful lives and make tons of money and, not be a burden to their family. But I just want to kind of learn from, you guys. You guys have so much staff that want to stay for an extra year, want to, continue helping others. And let's see what else. Also, the recruitment aspect. So all of my calls typically is like word of mouth. From prior graduates, occasionally from our website. So I go and I speak to 30-day treatment centers or detoxes, and like with the epidemic, you'd think we'd be full. Like we have 70 students among the 3 facilities, and we could house 60 in each. I have 25 in mine, and you think there's millions of people struggling. You think we'd be full, and we're not. So just kind of to pick your guys' brains and see what you guys are doing differently. I like the aspect of the deputy that's here. That sent me like chills through my body hearing you talk, and because our students have like this like mindset, like just a bad look on it, and it's so far from that. So I would like to learn how you brought the police department to your academy, and so much more. Yeah, I just want to run off the stage. I'm like grossly prepared. All you guys have these slideshows, and I'm more so just here to learn. So yeah, our Kent facility, so it's a furniture store. They have a wood shop, a warehouse, and I mean everything. Like you guys said, like our morning meetings are great. There's no cliques amongst the community. So while I was a student in the program, I'd walk into a room and there'd be 3 people sitting over here, 5 over here, 2 over here, and now every day when I walk into a room, the whole community's together. The camaraderie is so strong. They're all holding each other accountable, but also like pushing each other up. Like the positive reinforcement is huge, and it's incredible. Like the transformation that people are making. We're a tight-knit community. I feel with that, I'm able to really get to people on a personal level, and get to know them. I also have relationships with all their families, which is huge. Yeah, I'm just grateful to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Matt. And next up, we've got Red Barn Academy.
Hi guys, I'm John Trevord. I'm a program manager at Red Barn Academy. I'm also a graduate of the program. I've been there for 3.5 years, and really, for me to end up in a spot like Red Barn was a miracle. And today my life is full because of it. We just have the one location in Farmington, Utah. We're a farm-based setting. We have some animals. We have a beautiful garden. We got some animals. So we got 3 alpacas, some goats, some turkeys, some ducks. We got the bunny population under control. Finally, I kind of wish that we could get new students like we get new bunnies. So there's yeah. The highest amount, the highest population we've had has been 74 students. Right now we have 55. So our graduates, I focus a lot of my energy and time on the graduates and the workouts in the program. There's a picture of Michael Hawes, our executive director, in one of our alumni meetings. We have these weekly alumni meetings every Sunday night at the farm. And if they can't make it, we do Zoom link to provide options for them to stay connected and attend. And I feel like these are really great. These are great meetings. I'm also in charge of the workouts, and because of the support we have in the community with the jobs, it's like I wish that they could get. It would be a little harder for these guys to get jobs. They just go out and they say, "Oh, you're a graduate of Red Barn." They give them a job right immediately. So I want them to work a little harder. I'd like them to do some interviewing, some more resumes, more just outreach, and try to work a little harder to get that job. But it's just great in the community and the support that we have to get them jobs. So something cool we are doing, I feel like it's our Park Place Living, our graduate housing. Here we go. Say that again. One more time. So the success in long-term recovery. These guys, when they end the program, when they go away from the 2-year program and they go on their own, not very many of them make it. They all struggle, they all fail, they all fall. So we got this beautiful Park Place Living that's there in Farmington that the graduates can go and rebuild their credit. They stay there. It's great. The thing that I love about it is the fact that they get to come back to the house and go to accountability groups, go to house meetings, and share with the younger guys in the program what it's like to be successful, what they can have if they stay in the program, that they can make it through the program, that the program does work, and it's a great opportunity for the graduates. And then something we require here is connection, just like Mr. Nash said. It's what we want, networking. I am new in my position at Red Barn. I've been in about 6 months. I have lots of questions, and my go-to is to call Clay. And Clay will call and ask Dave if I can have this information to help me out. And every time I always get that information back to help us run our program better. And for me, that's huge. And I appreciate it with all my heart. It saves lives. When we work together, it's better, right? And that's what we want from you guys. And if you're not going to make it to their breakthrough group tonight, if you can make it out to Red Barn, we have the Sticky Fingers. It'll be a great tour, and it's our motto: "Give an addiction the bird," and that's Red Barn.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Next up, we've got Soul Recovery.
Thank you, Joseph. We're good. I'm like Vulcan. We don't have slides today. So I am Todd Delp. I'm with Soul Constructors. We're from Eastern Pennsylvania. And I am nervous, so bear with me. But we model ourselves after TOSA. So we are a therapeutic community where we have an enterprise. We do construction, but we focus on concrete, masonry, and we also are doing pool installations. Kevin Cobb is our founder. He's not able to be here, or otherwise he would be doing this, but and I would be sitting there relaxing. But Kevin, if you meet him one time, you will never forget him. We have nicknamed him the East Coast Dave. So he is very similar to Dave. Yeah. Yeah, we're trying to help him through all that. You know what I mean? Recovery starts at the top too, right? So we don't have slides with us because Kevin and I decided, we talked about it. We said, we just started changing this about 3 years ago to model ourselves after TOSA. TOSA's been helping us a lot. So I could have had a lot of nice slides up here, some cool colors and things like that, but there would have been no numbers to go with it. So it wouldn't have been real impactful. So, like I said, 3 years ago, we really changed the model to try and follow TOSA very closely. And if the 3 guys that I brought with me, our senior students, continue on their path, we will have some graduates in not too distant future. And then we can start tracking success and start putting that in some charts and things like that. Like I said, so what Kevin and I decided we would do is I would just talk a little bit about some of our struggles, because obviously some of you guys have been where we are now, and you can help us with that. So one of our struggles is the state of Pennsylvania. My dad always told me growing up, Pennsylvania is a great state to be from. So we are working basically against the state. They do not like us. They do not want us there. So some of the things that we are trying to learn while we're here is how do we break through that barrier? I got to talk to Joseph last time I was out here, and Dave. They gave a lot of good insight. Jeff Nash, I met him last night. It also gave some good insight. You know, we need to start at the low levels of leadership in our communities. We need to start talking to county judges, police chief, townships even, and maybe reach out to them and find out what do you need? What can we help you with? I recently was able to get in touch with the local judge. He's up for re-election. He loves what we're doing. So after talking to Jeff last night, hey, you're up for re-election. What can we do to help you? You know, can we set up an event and take down for you? So those are some of the things I'm really trying to learn from you guys. One of the other things is we are a facility of 10 students right now. We only serve men right now. And so trying to staff that, because it needs 24/7 attention. You know, like Dave said the other day, 5 o'clock, something comes up, there's a caper, something has to be unraveled. There's no punching out and going home. So how do we keep that staffed with a level of 10 guys? You know, we have one full-time guy that's helping us create the culture. But beyond that, how do we grow that? You know, that's a big hurdle for us. Kevin, if you know Kevin, I will tell you he is a visionary. He is, if you think of Soul Constructors as a machine, Kevin is the battery that makes that machine run. He is what I call the Energizer Bunny of our program. He is the one driving it. So my job is to support Kevin and facilitate everything I can to help us move forward. So those are a couple of our hurdles. If you know of some things that we can do to get through that, please stop me afterwards, talk to me, give me some insight, tell me what worked for you, maybe tell me what didn't work for you. But I also want to have one of our students, Connor Ambacher, come up and just share a little bit of what the daily life is in Soul Constructors.
Hello everybody, my name is Connor Ambacher. I am a 35-month senior at Soul Constructors. I am also nervous, so bear with me. The average day for us is we aren't on one campus, we have a house and a farm. So we wake up usually around 5 o'clock, we get ready for the day, we head to the farm for our morning meeting, our morning routine, and to get our day kicked off. From there, we will go to the construction site. Almost everything with construction is run through the students. We do the scheduling, we do the planning, material handling. It's all us. So we're going to wherever we assigned ourselves. We might be installing a pool. We could be, pouring 10 yards of concrete. It's always different. And it's a cool experience for me. I never had any experience like this in my life. I didn't know how to use a hammer when I got to Soul Constructors, and now I can go and I can pour concrete. I can build an in-ground pool. So we spend 8.5 hours training throughout the day. We come back to the farm after work, and we have our groups. We have almost everything the same as TOSA. We have breakthroughs once a week because of our numbers, but we have breakthroughs. We have leadership. We do seminar every day. So after our training, we come back to the farm. We spend time together. We cook together, eat together. We have our groups after dinner, and then we go home for the day and we relax together. Everything is together. There is no, when it's a community of 10 people, there is no real way to isolate. So that's pretty much a day in what we do. And what I would like to get out of this being a senior student, and I can speak for the other guys here, is we all in some way want to be a part of this moving forward and doing the best we can to make what we have in Pennsylvania a place where this can happen for people locally. They don't have to search the country for a good community. And I'm here to learn what I need to do to be able to be a part of what's happening at Soul Constructors, to be a staff and to be involved, to gather the information that I need to be a success and to help us be a success. So anybody who has any pointers, please get with us afterwards, and thank you.
So Todd points to one of the reasons that we need to be here together. All of us have so much to do in trying to save lives that of course occupies most of our time and attention. But all of us also face threats that are increasing in the policy domain that could ultimately lead to the demise of the therapeutic community model, at least its classic form. And if we don't take some portion of our time and focus on those threats, we'll ultimately be suffering for it. I was talking with John Volkin yesterday, and he was mentioning in their area in Canada that there are policy changes that literally say it's forbidden for you to encourage people to become abstinent from drugs. Now imagine that. If it became against policy or illegal for you to even have a conversation about overcoming a drug addiction. And so these are the sorts of things that are out there. We in the state of Utah face similar challenges. As we first began, I remember Tim and Dave and I sitting down with a regulatory body at the state level who just said, hey, we'll regulate you, but trust us, you'll like it. And we said, well, tell us a little bit about it. And they said, all you have to do is just pass a couple of hurdles. Actually, Lola was there too. And they said, the first thing we got to do is criminal background checks on your staff. And I said, well, that's not going to go well. And they said, oh, no, it'll be fine. Certainly none of your staff have any violent offenses. And at that point, I looked at Dave and shook my head. And they said, certainly nobody has been involved in the sex trade or anything like that. And little by little, we realized nobody's going to be left at the Other Side Academy. The very credentials that qualify them to have an influence at the Other Side Academy were against policy at the state level. We did not have an option of not working on the world. We need to work in the world, but we got to work on it at the same time. So those of you that feel daunted by legislative challenges, by issues at policy levels and regulatory agencies, don't despair of that, lock arms. We've got to figure out how to take that on. We actually ultimately had a special law passed twice just to carve out an opportunity for the Other Side Academy and Red Barn Academy to exist, and it worked. And when one state agency and state government talks with another, there's a lot of ways of transferring that influence. So we need to be thinking about that as well. All right, next we've got Harvest Academy. Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Taylor Smith. I'm the program director at Harvest Academy, and I've also brought our program staff, Minwin, with us. We are located out in Des Moines, Iowa, and we follow the classic therapeutic community model. Here's a little stats about Harvest Academy. We have one location in Des Moines, Iowa. We purchased the land in June 2020. We are a 2-year program with an optional third or longer. It's all free. You could stay 2 days, you could stay 5 years. As long as you're participating in the program and work in our enterprises, you have a place to stay for free. Our staff consists of one CEO, myself, the program director, program staff, and then we just recently hired on a business manager. Our moving company is our only revenue building student enterprise, but we were able to gain cover ourselves financially month to month in our 16th month. And I put our revenue up there each year. I joined Harvest Academy at the end of 21. And what I really like about this is if you look at year 2022, the first half of that year, I took every single bid. I led every single moving crew. I was out there every day with the guys. The latter half of the year, I went from crew lead to crew member. Students were able to kind of fill that role. I didn't take a single bid the later half of 2022. 2023, I have not taken a single moving bid. It's been done by our students, and I have not led one single crew. So, the numbers are cool. Obviously, you have to keep things going, but for the students to have skin in the game, for them to go out there and not only pay for their bed, but the guys that are in jail or needing a place to be, you have to see it and feel it to understand that pride that they have in not only themselves but the TC journey and their recovery, getting to do it alongside with other guys. You guys that know it's amazing, and you guys that are here to kind of explore that, it's one of a kind, definitely. Harvest Academy movers, we don't have the most ratings, but we are the highest rated moving company in the state of Iowa. We Like I said, right now, moving is the only big social enterprise we have that's not on facility or kitchen. Yeah, so I mean, you can see up there we have 323 5-star Google reviews. Literally our only other review is a 4-star. So I'm super proud of that. And again, that's not the means to it. It's like these guys did that. Our students did that. These guys that came from literally nothing are able to run the best quality moving company in the state of Iowa. It's incredible. So $570,000 Harvest Academy has saved the state of Iowa. So we calculated just the guys that are court appointed that have suspended sentences that would have either gone to jail or prison. The housing cost in Iowa we found was $38,000 a year to house one guy or gal for 1 year. So just calculating all the months up, yeah, saving the state money as well. Up here, you can kind of see our student averages and just about our population. Like I said, we have 12 students. Our first students came in, I think it was 3 or 4, December 2020. You can kind of see our averages up there. I mean, you can see those retention rates, not very good. There were a couple program directors that came in before me. They just, good guys, but they didn't set the culture. So I had to kind of come in, clean house a little bit. A lot of guys left. It was obviously not ideal, but I couldn't build off that. You can't build off of, an unstable foundation. So the culture was rocky, but there were a couple guys, 2-3 guys that did stick the course and are still with us today. And they've actually all 3 graduated. And if you look at our next slide, so our 3 graduates, we actually just had our 3rd graduate the 30th of August. And my favorite thing about this whole slide or this whole presentation is all 3 of 3 graduates have opted to stay on a 3rd year. So I'm super proud of that. We do our classes a little bit different. Here at TOSA, it's kind of just the typical high school freshman to senior. Ours are a little bit different, but the makeup of our other 12 students are 3 seniors, 3 freshmen, and then 3 interns. So interns are 90 days and below. Freshman is 3 months to about 7 months, and then senior is 15, 16 months to the end of that 24-month stay. Since our first students at the end of 2020, 30 guys have come and gone. 13 didn't even make it 2 weeks. 11 stayed 3 months or more. And of those 11 guys that did stay 3 months or more, 8 have actually stayed in contact with me or Tim, our CEO, and they check in. They just text us, call, we chop it up every once in a while. And 8 of those 11 guys have been able to avoid being reincarcerated and are employed. So, even though they didn't make it the 2 years, the TC works. So the big news, cool things going on at Harvest Academy. We are in the process of building a new facility. That's just a rendering, but we've been working with some architects to kind of make this thing go. Right now, we have 10 acres of land, but we've been capped by the county at 12 guys. So we've actually, last week, we just purchased 17 acres and got city council approval to rezone for what we need. So if you look, so this is what it looks like right now. So this is kind of a main road. The airport's actually right up the street. But back here, this would be the student housing. So pre-2-year guys, they're gonna be living in here. This is like the community center, the building that we're kind of in right now. These would be graduate and master students' apartments. And then up here would be our enterprises. So maybe storage, moving, construction, thrift store, cafe, restaurant. It's kind of open right now, but yeah, it's super cool. We're looking to be able to have 80 plus students there. And that's the big thing at Harvest Academy right now. What we came here to do, build relationships with other leaders, the leadership teams of other therapeutic communities. I'm pretty close with Dave and the guys out at Red Barn, but I know there's a whole bunch of other TC leaders out here that I would like to get to know. And before coming out here, I didn't really realize that there were people that were trying to get things going. I myself have not been through a TC. I definitely have a colorful background, this and that, got my life together. But I didn't go through a TC, and I think there are people out there that don't have that. And I will tell you, you can do it, but you kind of have to have the right background. You have to have the right skills. You have to have it, or you have to have the right people to do that. definitely, or else it kind of, can hurt more than can help. So definitely, if any of you guys have questions, feel free to ask. I know a lot of people have talked about it. How do you get more people? How do you get the awareness of the program out there into the jails, the prisons, and even the communities to get more students in? Being that we're pretty young, we're starting to see guys hit that workout phase. How do you keep the graduates connected? Because we know that's one of the biggest pieces to continue their success after the therapeutic community graduation. And obviously you've seen that rendering of our new facility that we're looking to do. I just need some information on how to fundraise. With our moving company, we can cover ourselves operationally, but if we just use the moving company, that project's going to take forever. So we are looking to get some knowledge on fundraising, and then honestly, just get as much information as we can. Harvest Academy is not only the first therapeutic community in Iowa, but I believe also the Midwest. So it's like a good pressure to have. It's really cool, but being able to connect and get as much information here and then bring that back to kind of, the therapeutic community works. So being able to bring it back there, prove ourselves, and then being able for other states or other counties in Iowa to expand is, that's what we're really looking to do. So thank you.
Thank you, Taylor. I want to say, compared to the very first of these summits, the number of organizations that are sharing numbers and that are tracking their numbers and then putting them up there naked has improved significantly. And I think that's a mark of our integrity. So we need to keep at that. Next we got Phoenix House.
We got Coach Saban up. Oh, there it is. My name is Ted Sexton. I'm the executive director of the Phoenix House of Tuscaloosa. I have a totally different view of why I'm here. I was a cop for 40 years. I was a sheriff for 25. When I retired, I went to the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department as the chief of Homeland Security. I've been an assistant secretary of the United States Department of Homeland Security. And so after I retired, we had the Phoenix House in Tuscaloosa had a problem with an executive director that appropriated some of their funds. And so after a embezzlement, the board was looking for new leadership. They asked if I would please come bring adult supervision and new business practices to the facility. When I was a sheriff, we had a medical unit within the jail. We were doing detox. We had a complete psychological, we have a psych unit. So we started a number of different things. So we were seeing the same cycles. My question when I got to the Phoenix House is, what can we do to break these cycles? Because I saw this gentleman on a video somewhere, and he was talking about how we're killing people with the current recovery process that we use with 7, 14, 28, so on and so forth. My question was, how did we come up with 90 days? How did 90 days become the mechanism to be able to get folks through recovery? I said, because why are we dealing with folks after a year that are back in jail? Why are we dealing with domestic violence? Why are we dealing with poverty? Why are we dealing with unemployment? Why are we dealing with all these other issues that are costing me as a service provider funding to be able to protect our community? So when I got to the Phoenix House, one of the first things I did was meet with our staff. We have a number of peers and our board of directors. And after the embezzlement, we restructured our board. We brought in a retired Alabama Supreme Court justice. We brought in folks from the business community. We brought in folks that could help us do a capital campaign. So we're right in the middle of a $6 million statewide combined capital campaign. Go to the University of Indiana Eli Lilly seminar on capital campaigns. That's where you can learn a lot about that. So, but there were a number of things that we were doing. So, but we are a transitional residential treatment. After detox, we do recovery. I had to fight the state on being able to get life skills in. They have a program called Ready to Work, and it was about life skills and getting people ready to go to work so that they know about responsibility, accountability, punctuality, and all these other things that are important for an employer. And the state was going, oh, God, we got to rationalize this, and we got to do these things to get these people over the recovery. And we're going, how about the employer? What are you going to do for the employer to show them that we are bringing somebody who's a qualified, capable individual who has a recovery, is in recovery, and can be successful with support of the community? So it's when you talk about the state and the bureaucracies and whatever, it is mind-boggling. But how do we go forward? For us, we're dealing with coming in the door. 83% of our folks don't have a job. 40% don't have a high school degree or a GED. 87% are unmarried, but 70% have children. 90% of our females report domestic violence or a history of sexual abuse. 73% are below the poverty line. 80% are coming in through the courts. 90% tell us they don't have an independent living plan, so they're homeless. And then, so these are things that we were trying to deal with. How do we break those cycles? How do we get them back involved? Okay, we can move forward. By the way, can we go back one? I'm sorry. Of those folks that came in homeless, we placed 184 into a living plan by the time they at least graduated the 12-week program. Okay? Can we go forward one, please? There. This will give you an idea. I talked to you about the life skills program that we were trying to get the state to allow us to do. We finally just did it ourselves. We found the funding on our own. So we've had 268 of our clients that went through in 2 years. 188 completed the program. 171 went out right away and were employed full-time with benefits. So that's we're not just trying to get them employed. We want to get them to places that have benefits so that they can take care of themselves and their families. So, but in this area here, we're concentrating on, okay, guys, you have a family. Are you aware of Maude Whatley Health Services? Are you aware of federal clinics and what a designated federal clinic can do? So we're trying to educate them as much as we can about what's available in the community. Right now, 70% of our participants that are graduating from here are successfully completing, and 90% are going out the door with full-time employment and benefits. The other 10% is basically those that are on disability. Now, we're trying to get to a 3-step program. It's just like Dr. De Leon last night said, the longer you can keep them in recovery, the better. And you know, I'm no fool. I've been at it 40 years. I'm going, this is not working. What can we do to improve it? So the Phoenix House is a 12-week transitional residential program. We're one of the longest ones. We're state certified. And this brings to us all kinds of bureaucratic red tape and headaches. Once we can get somebody into Partners in Recovery, which is our sober living homes, we are not under the state there. So we have much more flexibility. And our goal is to get to a third step, independent, sober living therapeutic community. We're noticing in the relapses that folks don't feel like they have the support, like they don't have a credit rating, they don't have, they're running into other small issues that become major problems. And they're back where they're back in their support group. So we're trying to figure out how can we lend them more support? How can we allow them to build substantial credibility in an independent living environment? So we're dealing with crisis stabilization, trying to change behaviors. And of course, it's all about whole person change, break the cycles, reduce social services, all these things that the state is looking for. So when we're talking to the state, we're talking about reducing the cost of these services, reducing overdose deaths, treatment for homeless, we deal with medically assisted treatment. I can hardly wait to ask you about your thoughts on that. And then long-term sustainable housing, foundation for independent living, better decision-making, and those types of things. So that's our goal. That's what we're trying to get. So our $6 billion capital campaign is to try to buy this hotel in Tuscaloosa. It's 110 units. It was recently renovated. It's already zoned for what we need. We're finding out that zoning boards love to talk to recovery centers. We would have our staff there. We'd be able to use 100 rooms, long-term treatment. The judges absolutely love this. The DAs are now starting to grab a hold of this by saying, this is an option that we might be able to do. We could come up with a 3-year sentencing option. The VA is right there in Tuscaloosa. They have a substance abuse program, so we're trying to get them to get involved with our program. And then mental health is an issue, which you talked about last night, the dual diagnosis, and what do they do with somebody that is a dual diagnosis situation that needs supervision. So we're trying to figure out all these options, but we're getting government to get real interested right there. So that's what the facility looks like now. I already mentioned that our goal here is to learn as much as we can and steal every great idea that you have so we can take it back to Tuscaloosa and use it. And I've got I know I would be remiss, Coach Saban would kick me in the butt. Do you have any eligibility left? Yeah, I mean, can you still play? Can they recruit you for next year? They're looking for running backs. You look like you could do it. You look like you could do it. We're doing a video loop in our dining room. There's an area where they come in, but there's a loop that's constantly running. We have about 90 persons that are on this video, and they're about 30 seconds to a minute. And they're talking about overcoming addiction. They're talking about adversity. They're talking about the challenges of life, just different things. And so we have a number of those that are shared experiences by peers. For example, we have a doctor that came through recovery. There's a lawyer that came through recovery. There's a government official. So they're saying that, yeah, I can do more. I can go back and get an education. I can do these things. And then we just have plain old folks. And then we have cucumbers like myself that are up there that give them. And so I'd like to show you just one of our cucumber videos. Speak, coach, speak. Can we run it off of the Drive Direct if it doesn't work there?
While they're working on this, I just want to let you know, we are recording all these sessions and they'll be available. We'll provide a link after. So if you saw something you really like and you didn't get it down, the recording of the session will be available made later, and we'll share that link out with everyone. And if you have any other questions on the content you're seeing, please reach out to us and we'll try to make sure that's all available for everyone. While we're working, we haven't had a chance to thank Jordan Hossman, who's here helping us. And Nicholas, I think, is around. They're both graduates from the Other Side Academy. They run our IT, our AV systems, our security, our phones, our internet, our websites, our social media, just brilliant additions to our team. And they've worked, we got a bid to do the services for this event from an outside. They're going to charge us $20,000 to do the AV management. And these guys said, oh, we can do it. And so, thanks for saving us $20,000, Jordan.
I tell our children and our grandchildren, just like I tell our players, there are two pains in life. There's the pain of discipline, and there's the pain of disappointment. If you can handle the pain of discipline, you will seldom have to suffer the pain of disappointment. Discipline is doing what you're supposed to do, when you're supposed to do it, the way it's supposed to get done. And while you're at the Phoenix House, you have the opportunity to begin a lifelong program of discipline in an effort to change your lives for the better. Take this time at the Phoenix House to make new routines, take responsibility for people in your life, and become accountable for every decision that you make. We all make mistakes and we all fall short at times, but the important thing is to pick yourself back up and try again. Maybe there's a different way to achieve your goal. You know, if you continue to do things the same way that you've always done them, you'll most surely get the same results. So try another way. Try harder. But above all else, try, and you will succeed.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you today. Is it working? It is. Thank you very much. I look forward to learning as much as I can from you all. And we have benefited from the community, both in the Pure community and others, but the community within Tuscaloosa has embraced us, and we're very appreciative of that.
All right, and let's see. Finally, we've got the Other Side Academy.
You have the slide deck? Yeah, Tim's got it. I did. Good morning. I'm Dave DeRocher, Executive Director with the Other Side Academy. And the Other Side Academy, we were established in 2015. But the truth of the matter is the Other Side Academy was really established in 1971 when Delancey Street started. That's what gave some of the directors here the opportunity to go through that therapeutic community. But we wouldn't be here today if about 10 years before we opened in 2015, Joseph didn't go to San Francisco and meet Mimi Silbert and write a chapter in the book, The Influencer, and realize that she had the cure for cancer at Delancey Street and wasn't spreading it. And he thought, someday I want to do this here. And thankfully, he was friends with Tim Stay, our CEO, and they had been colleagues and friends for many years. And they finally said, we need to fight this battle. And if we can't win it, we need to fight the war. And that's how the lightning in a bottle really happened. But there was a lot of things that were set in motion first. So almost to the day, I think it was August 31st, or maybe it was the 1st, myself and Alan drove to Utah. Lola was on her way. We got an extended stay hotel. We were waiting for the mansion to close. And Tim was calling me incessantly saying, you can't stay there. Joseph wants you at his house. You can't stay at the hotel. No, we're not staying at Joseph's house. And then he said, Joseph wants you at his house. So we stayed at Joseph's house for the next couple the next couple weeks. It was a nice house. We would have, but damn it, they sold it. Anyway, so that's kind of how it started, right? Salt Lake City campus right now has about 120 students. Denver has 65. We scaled the model into Denver. Lola Strong and Steve Strong went out there with Ashley Uden and some other, at that time, students and began that campus, and they are doing remarkably well. We are a 2.5-year, 30-month life skills and vocational training school. We are completely free. We don't charge anybody anything to be here. We don't take any money from the government. City, county, state, federal government, rich mommy and daddy, nothing. We will not take any money from the government whatsoever. Over 50% of our students ask to stay longer. Wrap your mind around that. Usually in a 30, 60, 90-day model, people are waiting at the door on day 29 to run back out to the very thing that chased them in. Over 50% of our students are asking to stay longer. Offer graduate transitional housing and aftercare services. At Delancey Street, none of that existed. Delancey Street saved my life, Lola's, Steve's, Chris's, and Sharon's. We owe it our lives, but that doesn't mean there weren't things that needed to improve. And I remember sitting in Joseph's house before we ever started with Tim, and we were discussing some of the things that we needed to do better. Where are the holes at? What needed to improve? And there was a lot of improvement that needed to be done. And we started talking about graduate housing. Then we went to TROSA and saw it in action and thought, holy cow, this is it. This is what we need to do. In Delancey Street, you'd start your workout phase, you would literally be walking down the street with your pants sagging, looking for a job. You're gonna work out for 90 days, whatever money you make, and it might take you a month to get that job, Delancey Street would keep half. So you made $4 grand, you got $2,000, time to graduate. You were literally walking down the street with a couple $1,000s in your pocket. What do you think is gonna happen? So at the Other Side Academy, you start your workout phase. Every single student, 100% of our students, every single student, the day they become a graduate, has a full-time job. We help you with the foundational employment. Where you take it from there is up to you. Many of them take that job. They're still working there. Others use it and leverage themselves into better paying jobs and better opportunities. We have social enterprises that generate our revenue. In month 17 of our existence, we started to cover all of our operational costs, and we have ever since. If we weren't having capital campaigns, purchasing new properties, starting new facilities, we wouldn't have to reach out to our donors to ask for money. If we were just gonna stay 50 people here and that was it, we'd be covering all of our operational costs. We have the Other Side Movers, #1 rated moving company in the entire state of Utah. In 2018, we were at the Grand America Hotel. Some of you know where that's at. 1,500 people in that ballroom. Our movers, our students, won the Ernst & Young Entrepreneurs of the Year with the moving company ran by ex-felons and ex-drug addicts. Wrap your mind around that concept. We kicked Utah's elite. And while most organizations are looking to hire the top 2%, we're taking the bottom 2% and we're winning. There's reasons for that we'll talk about over this weekend. We have the Other Side Thrift Boutique, very large, not little tiny thrift stores. Most of you were there yesterday, 20,000 square foot showrooms in some cases, just immaculate. And when you think thrift boutique or thrift store, you usually think Goodwill DI, think Macy's, Nordstrom's, or Saks Fifth Avenue. They are that nice of a thrift boutique. The Other Side Furniture Boutique in Denver, very similar. They were focusing solely on furniture for quite some time, and now they're getting ready to open up their own thrift boutique. We have the Other Side Builders. This really kind of, Jordan Holdaway, who you saw walk through here a few times, has been with us now, oh, there he is right there, been with us now for about 7.5 years. Just real quickly, had a very rough first couple of years, kept making the same mistakes, kept getting contracts, and at about 20 months, we had a decision to make. Do we let him graduate at 2 years, because we were a 24-month program at that time, and leave the same person that came in? We walked him out, we brought him in, we sat him down, we kicked him out, we started him all over again, and he decided to do that, and he's been with us ever since, and he's one of the greatest men you'll ever meet. He now runs our construction company, and during COVID, just when COVID happened, we allowed him to go get his contractor's license, and now we do flat concrete work, remodels, bathrooms, kitchens, you name it. And most of the work that was done here, a lot of the work on the mansion and outside that you see the construction going on, is his crew. So thank you, Jordan. Remarkable job. The Other Side Storage. People who move have things they want to give away, right? The Thrift Boutique. People who move have things they need to store. Trosa again, when we went out there, we saw their storage facility and what they were doing out there, and we implemented ourselves. And now we have the moving company, Thrift Boutique, construction company, and our storage, a storage company. We generated $8.3 million in revenue in 2022, and we'll probably get closer to, what, 9 this year? And the students are doing all of the work. Why is that important? Well, 84% of our graduates are employed. 100% upon graduation, 84% currently. 83% of all graduates are crime-free. 83% of our graduates are crime-free. Our average student's been arrested over 25 times, 25.6 the last time we did the math. Some over 50 times. The recidivism rate is 100%. I don't care how you do the math. If I got out of prison and 3 years later I got rearrested, I recidivated. If I got out of prison and 3 days later I got rearrested, I recidivated. If you got arrested 25 times, it's 100% recidivism. It goes down to that number there. 74% of our graduates are drug-free. That's incredible. Yep. 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 71% of our graduates are DCE, drug-free, crime-free, and employed. As of December 31st, 2022. What we've noticed and what we've seen is many people will graduate, they might start using again, maybe they'll start drinking, but they're not going back to crime. And they've learned enough while they were here to reach out and get back on track. Maybe reach out and get into a shorter term program and take what they learned here with them. We've done that a lot. Not everybody wants to come back for 2.5 years, but we will help place them in other organizations for that tune-up that they need. That means they've learned a lot. One of the coolest things we're doing now is the Other Side Village. Over the past few years, we realized there is a portion of the population that we are not able to help. People with severe mental health issues, mental health differences, physical disabilities. We've gone all over the world, primarily in Spain to La Fageda, and realized there's an organization there that's generating $20 million a year, and 75% of that workforce has severe mental health issues and physical disabilities, that they happen to be human too, and given the opportunity to become the best version of themselves, they can. And then we were deciding here if we were gonna open up a third facility in San Diego. Tim, Joseph, the rest of our leadership group were discussing it over a lengthy period of time, and it's no exaggeration. Joseph and I were sitting in my office, and we were discussing, what do we do? A village, a third facility, a village, a third facility. I can't make this up. My phone beeped. We got a text. It was San Diego. The chairperson there, which is the equivalent to the mayor, lost her seat, and all the money got pulled. The decision was made for us, and we decided to do the Other Side Village. It is going to be absolutely incredible. About 450 homes for the chronically homeless brothers and sisters that are currently on the streets. There'll be a number of social enterprises, from a cultural hall to a nail salon to a donut shop, some of which you guys will be enjoying here real soon. The The neighbors, we refer to them
soon,
as
Dave?
neighbors.
How
right?
soon?
You look Vanna White over here. The neighbors, it is permanent housing, right? So it's going to be incredible. We'll talk more about that too as the weekend goes on. What do we want from this summit? You might be here at our facility, but we want to be with you and learn from you. We just happen to be doing this here. But as an organization, we have traveled the world and we have traveled to many of your organizations and we have learned so much. So we want to learn and take in as much as we can so we can better serve our students and become a stronger organization. Thank you.
So thank you. There's an incredible experience set in the room and lots of opportunity over the next couple of days for us to learn from each other and hopefully lots of opportunities to extend that into the future and influence the fates of our organizations. Clearly from the statistics, there are two stories. We're doing some good and we suck. All of us can do a lot better. There are a lot more lives that we ought to be able to help. And so being here is the right thing for us to do. Thank you for making this investment in yourself. And thank you for your willingness to share with others as well. And I'll turn it back to Tim.
All right, we've ended the session a little early, so let's take a break right now. We'll start and come back at 10, and I invite you to partake of our donuts. And we have some other treats. We have coffee over here. Let's start back right at 10 o'clock. We're having the break here, but yeah.
All right, let's huddle back together as soon as you can. 2 minutes.
All right, if we can go ahead and get started. This next session is on outcome data. How do we define success and how do we measure it? And we'll get an opportunity here from both TROSA and the Other Side Academy about how they do it. And we appreciate everyone sharing their slides with in their introductions of the outcome data. And I'll turn the time over to Joseph.
For those of you that I haven't had a chance to meet yet, my name is Joseph Grenny. I'm chairman of the board of the Other Side Academy and the Other Side Village. And I want to introduce you to my alter ego. So my other job has been in the field of organizational behavior. And I spent the last 35 years trying to figure out how to change behavior in organizations. And that's what led me inevitably here. And I just want to share with you kind of the context for how I think about measurement and influence. And here's sort of the central finding from 35 years of what it takes to create change. That organizations that systematically and effectively help change behavior do these three things well. And organizations that don't. The reason they fail is a lack of one of these. So the way the world works is this. There are different sources of influence, 6 in particular, that shape our behavior. And if those stay stable for some period of time, our behavior becomes habitual, and that behavior creates our results. So if I'm incarcerated, if I'm unemployed, if I'm homeless, if I'm an organization, if I'm a hospital with high infection rates, same issue. 6 sources of influence shape behavior. That behavior creates our results. The way we change behavior, the way we change results, is starting over here. You start by being clear about what you're trying to achieve. I think the striking moment in our conversation with George last night was him saying, why do you do this? Why do you do this? Why do you do this? What result are you after? Or what's the rationale for what you're doing? So being clear about what we're trying to achieve and how we intend to measure ourselves against it is the beginning of influence. If you don't do that right, none of the rest of it matters. You end up creating a kind of self-deluding hobby operation that probably is not achieving its mission. The next thing you got to do is be clear about what are some of the vital behaviors, the key behaviors you're trying to foster that you believe are most consequential to creating these results. And finally, you say, how do I design a holistic system where all 6 sources of influence point the same direction? Now, I'm not going to have time to go into all of this. I just want to start over here and share with you why that's so important. So real quick, grab a buddy. So look to your left and right and decide who's smarter and buddy up with them. Do you want to work with her? Is that going to be all right? Okay. So grab a buddy. And I want to have you speculate about this. So the London School of Economics did an interesting study. There were some best practices in the airline industry for trying to reduce waste and have a better effect on the environment. They decided to do a little experiment. It involved 335 pilots, 40,000 flights, pretty big sample. And they wanted to test what it took to get people to do 3 things, to get pilots to do 3 things. First, pre-flight fuel efficiency, so carrying only the fuel necessary. Turns out a lot are overloaded. Second, in-flight efficiency, so picking the best routes, speeds and altitudes. Finally, post-flight efficiency, turning off the engines while taxiing to the gate. So real simple kinds of things, simple behaviors that you think all pilots would do, but they don't. And so they tested 3 different interventions to see which would have the greatest effect. So here's your job. I want you to be good social scientists for a moment and speculate about which of these would be the most consequential. So in the first condition, they just tracked performance and reported to them. So they said, how often are you doing these 3 things, and gave them some feedback. The second group got their performance tracked, but they were also given a goal based on their past behavior. So here's where you're at, and here's a 10% improvement goal. The final group was tracked, got a goal, but also an incentive. If you achieve your goal, here's a little Visa card or whatever it is that you're going to get, okay? So chat with your partner. What do you think would have the biggest increase in effect? Where was the biggest jump in improvement? Talk with your partner, make a decision. Group 1, group 2, group 3. All right, you got your bets? So group 1, how many would say group 1? Nobody. How about group 2? So having a goal, pretty important. How about group 3? So in goal plus incentive, why would you not believe in that? Turned out adding the incentive did nothing. Did absolutely nothing. The biggest jump was just that. The biggest jump was just consciousness, clarity, people being aware of where they're at. This one added a little bit, giving a little goal, but the goal plus the incentive made no difference whatsoever. Now, this isn't to suggest that incentives never help, but what I want us to get out of this is that the critical part of this is just consciousness and awareness. What result are we after, and how are we going to measure it? Makes a huge difference on human performance and human behavior. So I want you to speculate again for a moment. What if we lived in a world where you never measured teacher effectiveness in schools? What if we lived in that world? What would happen? Yeah, we do live in that world, don't we? What if we lived in a world where you measured foreign aid by how much you gave out? We do, don't we? Yeah, and so what we don't see is the kind of effects or the kind of results we're after. What if you measured a marketing campaign by how many media impressions it generated? What if you measured progress on sexual assault in the military by tracking reported assaults? What if that's how you measure? I want you to think about how critical measurement is to the behavior we're trying to drive. What we're going to talk about, Trosa and ourselves here for just a few minutes, is the heart of what we do. This isn't some ancillary thing you do for compliance reasons or to report to a regulatory body, because most of us don't report to them anyway. And so we're going to come at this a different way. Let me just give you one quick illustration of why we need this and why we are morally obligated to do this. So this illustration comes from the fertilization assistance, pregnancy assistance industry. So this was one of the worst parts of healthcare up through the 1990s. People became increasingly frustrated with their inability to have a child, and so started reaching out more and more for fertility assistance services. But it turned out that while revenues increased dramatically, there was absolutely no evidence that the services were producing much of an effect. So in 1992, Congress passed a law. They said, from today forward, all of you who are offering fertility assistance services have to report your outcomes to the CDC. What do you think happened? Now, you might guess that performance started to improve. Nothing happened because it was private reporting. Because it was just, yeah, you got to track your numbers, and then somebody slides that envelope over to the CDC and they stick it in a database somewhere. In 1997, they passed a new law. They said, now that we've got the data, we're going to make it public. Guess what happened? This happened. This is live births as a percentage of in vitro fertilization services that people receive. And the results started to spike from that day forward. Why? Because people were induced or were forced, were coerced in some way to examine how they were doing. They knew they were going to be publicly accountable for that. And so they started critiquing their own methodology, dealing with the defensiveness in their organization from doctors that say, I'm doing the best thing I possibly could. That's when the spike improved. I could share with you hundreds of these kinds of examples, but let me give you one other. The principle here is this: the measure of a measure is how it influences behavior. You don't need to measure a ton of stuff in your organizations to have a good organization. You just need to measure the right few things. The measure of whether it's a good measure is it maintaining the attention of your team? Is it maintaining the attention of the board? Is it maintaining the attention of the people who ought to be innovating and improving? There are just a handful of things, and I'm sure George could list them for us, that we ought to be paying attention to. early attrition, late success, post-graduation success. Very few little numbers. And if we clutter it up with too much stuff or don't measure those things at all, we lose. We're those fertility services organizations that are taking money and achieving nothing. One final example. This is a friend of Tim's and myself. His name is Luis Fernando Sanabria. He helps run an organization called Fundación Paraguaya. And I want you to listen to their story and see what the problem here is. So beginning back in the 1980s or so, they said, our goal is to reduce poverty. And they said the best way we can reduce poverty is to make little loans to people who are in poverty so they can start businesses and increase the income of their families. And so they started this loan operation, made these loans, and said, doggone it, these poor people are doing such a great job because they're all repaying their loans. They had like 99% loan repayment rates, and they declared victory. What's the problem with this story? What's the problem? Yeah, what are they measuring? Loan repayment rates. What should they be measuring? Poverty alleviation. So they ought to be holding themselves to that. So they're patting themselves on the back every year, and they'll trot it out in a brochure every year and tell you a few stories about a woman that got a loan and started a business and is doing phenomenally now, and it gets a lot of tears from all of the donors. But the fact of the matter is, all they know is 99% of the people are repaying their loans. It's awful. It's corrupt. It's unintentional corruption, but it's corruption nonetheless, because we're absorbing resources and claiming to achieve a mission, and we have no idea if we are. Does this make sense? And so, fortunately, he got a hold of this book, the Crucial Influence book. He and his team read through it, and unlike most organizations afterwards, they became self-critical. They said, what did we really say that we were out to achieve in the beginning? Alleviating poverty. So they designed a little test. They said, for the next 6 months, we're going to take 1,500 of our borrowers and we're going to move them to this new group. We're going to have people who don't call themselves loan officers anymore. They're going to call themselves finance coaches who are going to work with them, and their job is to get them to $5 per capita per day in income in their family. That was the bottom of the poverty line in Paraguay at the time. They said, that's your job. Whatever it takes to do it. If you make them a loan, cool. But only if that helps them get to $5 per capita per day in income in the family. By the end of the year, all 1,500 families had gotten up to above the poverty line. And only about 10% of them got loans. 90% of the activity was significantly different. Most of it had to do with how you're managing and budgeting your money and dealing with other decisions and lots of other things. But when they started measuring the right thing, it dramatically changed behavior in the organization. Over the next year, they fundamentally retrenched, but it all started with that. So, the beginning of influence in all of our organizations should be declaring honestly, what are we claiming we're going to achieve and how are we going to measure it? So with that background, I want to make an argument. The argument is this, that the nonprofit sector is fundamentally broken, that it's a corrupt sector. Again, not corrupt by intent, but corrupt by effect, because it consumes massive resources that are intended to achieve missions, and there's almost no accountability for whether or not they're achieving them. Its sickness is structural, but not personal. So Fundación Paraguaya is a good example of this. Nonprofits work like this. You've got donors that give the money, and then the money is supposed to be used to affect the clients. That's the structural problem. Because the money's coming from where? It's coming from donors, not from the people that are receiving the service. And that allows for corruption in the entire system. Here's how a good market works with a nice feedback loop. A good market works like this. It drives innovation because funding is hardwired to effectiveness. It looks like this. You've got a company, let's call it DreamWorks, and it has to sell something to customers. And if the customers don't like it, what happens? Yeah. And so here's an example. This is a Harry Potter movie coming out, and what do you see in the picture? You got people lined up weeks in advance dressed like characters from the movie because they want to see the movie. And when that happens, you make more Harry Potter movies, right? You get feedback from the market, and so you're driven to improve. You're coerced into improving. Hopefully some do it out of conscience, but the market will beat the crap out of you if you're not doing it. And so when you create something like Cats the Play, right? Here were the reviews for Cats the Play. Any of you see Cats the Play? How about Cats the Movie? See Cats the Movie? Were you sorry? Most people were. These are the reviews for Cats the Movie. Cats, a Broadway musical adaptation straight out of the litter box. Cats is good, Cats is bad, Cats is Cats. Cats Review, a sinister all-time disaster from which no one emerges unscathed. And finally, Cats Review, a perfectly deadly hairball of woe. These were all the reviews. Did they make a Cats 2? No, because the market gave them that feedback. It said, we don't want any more of this. So this is how it has to work. The problem is we work in a sector where that doesn't happen. In fact, when you come to the Other Side Academy and most other therapeutic communities, you don't pay, right? And so there's not a feedback loop that says this ain't working. And so it requires conscience rather than market. It requires leadership rather than followership. It's not going to be external coercion. It has to be voluntary commitment on our parts to make this happen. So when the funder is the customer, innovation becomes routine. And we see that from the product world, consumer products. We all see how dramatically things improve. And the reason is because there's immediate market feedback. We don't have that. We don't get that. And so it depends on the people in the room to make that happen. The disconnection of funding and effectiveness makes innovation an unnatural act. George challenged us last night that if we aren't thinking about why we're doing it and checking whether the effect is being created, then we all get lazy. We all get dumb. And what happens is we're doing it out of tradition and out of habit rather than out of intentional intervention to try to produce a result. And it's up to us to make the difference there. We live in a sector that is sick and diseased. So here are the worst charities in America. Usually, when you were the worst charity in America, you would go out of business. But these organizations continue to raise funds like crazy. And they're very well supported. Why? Because they can produce a brochure with a few tearjerker stories that tugs the heart of a donor, and donors are lazy. Donors don't dig in and figure out whether or not the mission is actually being achieved, including some of ours. So, the principle here is this: nonprofits can sustain funding by feeding donors a steady diet of anecdotes and activity lists. Here's an example. So this was Fundación Paraguaya's website before they started fundamentally transforming. What do you notice? What are they bragging about? More than 123,000 clients accessed loans, right? More than 47,000 enterprising women that we work with. What are they talking about? Yeah, they're talking not about outcomes. What are they talking about? Yeah, they're talking about just the activities. And they're reporting on the number of activities they do. And most of us do that. Most of us try to impress people with how many people we touched and how many socks we delivered or how many meals we served. Well, if that's your mission, is just getting people through the night, okay, then that's the right measure. But if you're claiming to do something else, shame on you, because it's a lie. This is a lie. So here are the big ideas. Number one, our industry. If we consider ourselves at least adjacent to the rehab industry, it's systematically corrupt. The reason is it's trusted to solve a catastrophic problem. People come to us in crisis. Secondly, it consumes massive resources in what it claims to be an effort to achieve that, and it has almost no accountability. In the state of Utah, the vast majority of people that go to programs as an alternative to incarceration that receive funds for doing that have no accountability for transparency about how many people came in and how many people maintained the outcome. All they have to report on is how many people came. We served this many people. We had this many beds. We had them for this many nights. Does this sound like your market too? Second, accountability for transparency reporting outcomes will radically transform the industry. One thing would radically transform this entire sector. If tomorrow there were a national demand that every organization that received a check from anybody ever, whether it's a worried family or whether it's a government agency, every single agency had to report on long-term drug-free, crime-free, and employed statistics. About 3/4 would go out of business tomorrow, and the other 1/4 would start hockey sticking, because they'd be running around like crazy, not just saying, how can I argue that I'm standing behind some evidence-based fig leaf? How can I say that there are a couple of papers and I'm doing the things that those papers say I could do? And how can I actually produce an outcome rather than just conforming to what helps me get funding? So here's the call to all of us. If you, as an organization today, if you're up and running already, or if you're intending to, the very first thing you've got to do is make a commitment to measurement and transparency. Hold yourself accountable. It's a proud moment for me when Harvest Academy stands up and shows some things that we all are squeamish about. And our numbers look the same. There are a lot of lives that we lose, a lot that don't make it. and it ought to make you uncomfortable. That's what motivates us to improve and to change. If you're not measuring and publicizing your outcomes, you're part of the problem. You're part of the disease. Don't you dare start a classic therapeutic community and not commit to the kind of transparency we demand of our students. That's hypocritical. They sit in rooms every night, twice a week, and expose themselves to the scrutiny of everybody else. How dare we not? Can I get an amen? All right. So 3 reasons to do that, if I haven't made the point well enough already. The first is it influences our students. This little sign over there, I can't tell you how many students will linger in front of that little sign that's right next to the group box. It says, what will happen if you just walk through the door? What are your prospects if you make it through the first month, if you make it through the first year? They need to see that. They need to see that there's evidence here that would motivate them to say, boy, if I want to look like one of those people, that's what I got to do. Secondly, it ought to provoke self-reflection in us and get us to try to improve what we do. Last night, George challenged us about an element of our graduate program. He said there's a big missing piece to it in having a therapeutic follow-up with people, and shame on us for not having that yet. And our numbers are evidence that he's right, that we need to be doing something different. And finally, to change the rehab world, we need to set an example that shames the rest of the sector into complying with the exact same practice. And we have the power to do that. We see it happening already in Utah, and we plan to continue to express that same voice. So you need this. You need your equivalent of that. You're going to see TROSAs as well. They were the most shining example I had ever seen, and we've tried to live up to the example that they set for us when we first visited them. And it ought to be something that's easily consumable like this. DCE for us is just drug-free, crime-free, and employed. And if you've got 15 other measures you're tracking, you're just confusing the issue. Just get to the essence in your measures of what do people care about? What are the basics that they're trying to achieve? So here's the outcome data from the Other Side Academy as of February 2022. We actually, because we wanted to have external scrutiny, turned this over to a Utah State legislative auditor. And we said, this is what we believe is happening, but you check it against your statistics, your rearrest and your employment statistics. And this guy dug through it. And we held our breath because we thought, well, what if we missed something? You know, this could be kind of embarrassing, but it would be righteous embarrassment. It'd be exactly the right kind. And what they reported back is that 78% of graduates remained crime-free in the following 2 years after graduation. They validated that. There was an 89% reduction in numbers of crimes committed. They were able to go through this. Crimes committed by TOSA students dropped 89% after graduation compared to pre-graduation. So substantial, rigorous analysis of that. What I love about what TROSA does as well is they bring in outside agencies, academic partners and others to try to scrutinize things. Outcome criminal activity of those who leave early. Here's what we've learned. I'm happy to share these slides with you as well. We've been able to validate, just as TROSA have, the dosage effect. The longer they stay, the better they do. And what a great argument to be able to make to your students. Some of you have been asking about, how do you get them to stay 3 years? How do you get them to sign up? That's how you do it. You have the stories and the evidence from your own students that persuades them. Please.
From the independent study.
These are from the independent analysis. Yeah. So James Behunen's summary to this, he actually used much less boring adjectives when he says this off the cuff, but this is a sort of formal expression of it. The Other Side Academy has a highly effective approach to rehabilitating criminal offenders with serious substance abuse problems. We needed this because adult probation and parole in the state of Utah was passing around this story that the Other Side Academy is not evidence-based. Was a bunch of crap, and we produced a whole bunch of George DeLeon's greatest hits to try to prove the opposite of that, and a bunch of others as well. But sharing research reports and white papers, they don't get read, and it doesn't affect people. But when you can start getting somebody from their own ranks to validate it as well, then you've got a strong story. Without measurement, we won't change the world. So the final evidence I want to give you of why this is worthwhile internally, we were able to compare those who come with good, strong criminal justice system accountability in their completion rates to those that don't have that, to have either a weakened judicial system that they're confident won't hold them accountable, or just walk in off the streets without that kind of expectation. Look at the difference. Those that come with that kind of accountability are 250% more likely to complete the minimum 2.5 years. When we take that kind of evidence out to legislators and policymakers, we have influence, we have conversations. They know the anecdotal version of that, but this provides them a little bit of evidential support to take a strong and a bold position against the tide of a slackening criminal justice system. And so this is why we do this. It gives us influence internally, externally, as well as with our students. So come up with your own version of that. With that, I'll turn the time over to our friends from TROSA.
Hey, the microphone kind of freaks me out. I am really excited to talk about data. I don't get to talk about it much, but it's one of the most exciting things to me. So it's right there. I love it. I hope you'll love it too. Okay, so in like the late 2000s, TROSA started working with that is not a good place to stand. It's a Marilyn Monroe thing happening there. So in the late 2000s, TROSA started working with a graduate of the program who had graduated, gone to school for computer science, and knew a bunch of computer stuff that we didn't know, and he helped us build a web-based database. So now we use Fresh Start, our database, for everything. And I've been working closely with him since I started in TROSA in 2009. So it's been a 14-year love-hate relationship with our database. And I'm happy to share every detail of that with you if you want. So I'll go through. I'm a little embarrassed because Joseph and I did not speak ahead of time, so I didn't know I couldn't share output data, but I do. So I'll do it, but thank you. So one perk of having our own database is that we made it for us, and we currently use it for everything. When our interviewers are interviewing our applicants, that interview is going directly into our database. The questions of our assessment are in this database and they enter it straight in there. So we're collecting all of this demographic information on everybody, and it is going straight into our database. And then I'm able to extract that later to tell funders who we're serving. It also means that we were able to build sections in the database for games, which are our groups. Or what do you call them again? Breakthrough groups. Our teams, where people live. During COVID, the where people live became very important because we had to put people into isolation. And so knowing where people are is something we didn't have prior to Fresh Start. We used to use an Access database, and well, I can tell from some of your laughter, you know what the problem with that was. So anyway, so we're collecting all of this background information on people, and different funders care about different things. I mean, we get money from the VA, and so they're going to care about how many veterans we have. Then we have all this program information that I promised not to read off of the slide for you. But it is, but it is all the stuff that people want to know about us. They want to know, yeah, you have people for 2 years, but what are you doing with them while they're there? So maybe that's output, but there's also some outcomes happening in there as well. Like how many counseling appointments are people getting? How many people are actually earning their GEDs? Or how many people are getting their driver's licenses? Or any of these, we can tout the fact that we offer these services. We give counseling appointments, or we help people get their driver's licenses. But if you don't actually tell them how many people are getting, then it has no impact, right? And here is one out of this data collection. You know, I get when people's admission dates are, so then I know how long they've stayed, because I also get their discharge dates. So then I can tell you how long did each person stay. And then we can go and compare that against the national statistics. So here you'll see that, that we do better than the typical. So if you look at long-term treatment, defined here as a longer than 30-day stay, in the US, you'll have people stay about 41 days, where we have people stay 169 days. And short-term treatment on a 30-day or less, we have 71% of our people will stay longer than 30 days, where 54% will stay 30 days or less in other facilities. So, you know, when we tell people that our graduation rate is 25%, they're like, damn, that's terrible. Like, because people don't understand substance abuse treatment, right? that this is actually a great number. Of course, we're always trying to find ways to do better. We're real excited when that number occasionally goes up to 30%. But that when we say 25%, that's actually darn good for this industry. And so to have these comparisons is really helpful. So here are our graduate outcomes. So at 6 months and 1 year after our graduation, Herb and his team will call all the graduates and find out how they're doing 1 year after they've graduated. Now, as you may imagine, not everybody wants to answer our call. So this is not 100% of our graduates 1 year after, it's those that respond to our outreach. So 97% are going to report being in recovery 1 year after. 100% are either staying at TROSA, are still at TROSA in a leadership position, or they're employed out in the world. And 99% have no new criminal convictions. Usually that's like one person. You always have that one guy that's got to ruin your stats. So as Joseph was telling you, that we did a couple years ago, 2017, partner with RTI, which is a local research group, to find out how we're doing. Because again, you can say how great you are, but it's got a lot more impact if you got a third party saying that you're great as well. So they looked at us and to see how much money we're saving the state, and they found that we saved the state $7.4 million a year. Now, the state loves to hear that. So it was a great number to be able to, it's a great number for us to use with any government official or the state in saying that we're worth investing in. All right, so the way we show success, I have a whole spiel about success that I'm going to spare you from, because success in substance abuse is quite tricky. And I don't know that we have one definition that we can really hold on to, because if like Pierre were to drink today, he's been sober for 20 plus 30 years. If he were to drink, he were to drink today, would we call that a failure? Like that would be absurd. What if the guy that graduated last year had a beer, really regretted it, and then never picked up a beer again? Was like, oh crap, I don't want to go down that. Do you call that a failure? So I did kind of just give you my spiel, sorry. But I will tell you that most people in this industry haven't thought about that, don't think about that, and they just want to know how many people graduated, and they want to know if your people are still sober. And then they don't even ask how you define sober. But you can't say we don't have a definition, and you can't give my spiel as your answer. You have to have numbers to give people. So the way we do it is we talk about who we serve, our length of stay, and our phase completion, which is like that graph, but I'm going to go home and copy that graph because I don't have it. Program accomplishments, such as how many people are getting their GED, how many people are getting their driver's license, how many people get their CDLs. We've gotten funding recently with workforce foundations, and they want to know how many people are getting ServSafe certified, how many people are doing forklift, how many people are doing CDLs. So they're not even worried about sobriety. They want to know, are people going back and working? Then our graduate outcomes, and money saved, and the recidivism. This is how we've decided as an organization to present ourselves as worthwhile and that we're getting things done. And we're not just, serving 840 people last year. So one thing I was going to show you, and messing up my slide. So this is kind of nitty gritty of my job that hopefully is somewhat interesting. So basically what happens is we have this database. I ask for it to get dumped into Excel by our developers, and then I do some Excel nerdiness and fill out this Google spreadsheet that I share with my CFO, my development team. When I say I mean my coworkers. That sounds. So that we all have access to the same information. And basically I only have to do the job once because they all want to know the same stuff. Like, who did we serve last year? So here you'll see, we had 841 people at TROSA in the last fiscal year. And how many nights is that? What was that? Our average daily population is 453. So I just wanted to share this to kind of give you an idea of the importance of data and kind of the different ways in which it's used. You'll see here in my different columns, I've got it by North Carolina counties because all these different funders want to know who we're serving from their home. So I've got Triangle North, which is because we've had 18 people from Franklin, Granville, Vance, and Warren counties. And so anyway, it's kind of more nitty gritty, but I was hoping to share kind of where it goes with data and the importance of data to get money, which is how we help more people. And then I've got the outputs down here where you'll see, well, there you see their drugs of addiction. We served last year, 30% had heroin or opiate as their primary. Then we have the workout information here. So on average, our graduates at entry reported that they made $3.47 an hour on average at intake. And graduates reported on average $17.21. So as you'll see, that's a big leap. And so that impresses some of those folks, those workforce focused folks. Any questions? Come on, it's data, it's exciting. Okay.
What's the most effective way for you guys to recruit your students? How are you getting your students?
That's a great question. So we had 540 people before COVID, and we've got about 410 today. So we got hit pretty bad. I will say that word of mouth is our biggest recruitment. You can't be in Durham, North Carolina and not know about TROSA. We are everywhere. You see our moving trucks. Our thrift store is 100,000 square feet. It's an old Walmart. So then you see the thrift trucks going around the town. We do community events. We do, like Tim was talking about TOSA doing, we do breakdown and cleanup at different community festivals, community events. We help at 5K runs. And people wear TROSA shirts. We've got TROSA Lawn Care, and so their vans and crews are all around town. So, and then we've gone to all the jails for interviewing. So a lot of people, so really, we've just made ourselves very visible. We have not done the same in Winston-Salem yet, and this summit has reminded me of the importance of that. We haven't done it because we didn't have the waiver to get more people. So we didn't really want to put our name out there and say, oh, but we're not taking new admissions. We just got that waiver last week. So I'm imagining Pierre and I are going to be out and about a lot in Winston-Salem upon return. But we need to do that. That's what we've relied on in the past, and we need to do in Winston-Salem. Yes.
How are you collecting this data? This is detailed data. How are you collecting it? Does it come from case managers or weekly case management reports?
That's a great question, especially because it's our residents that are inputting all of this, basically. So our residents work our intake department, which is really important. I think Dave talked about this yesterday. It is, I think, ethical to have people in the program being the ones that do those interviews, because I think there's a lot of shame, right? So it's really important to be like, that's my story too. I am you, right? So they're putting the interviews in. That gets me my basic information. They put in the interviews, and then they put in the admission forms once they actually come. And then all of the program information is in there. So what groups they're in, what hours they've gotten, what contracts they have, and that is all residents. So it's our men's program staff are putting in our progress notes. Like if I talk to Billy today and he's having a rough time, I'm going to put in a progress note that Billy's struggling. And then when people apply to be a senior resident, stay on after the 24 months, I can pull up Billy's record and I can see every hour, every contract, every progress note, how many medical appointments he's had, how many counseling appointments he's had. You get his whole record. So all of our residents are pretty much running their departments and using this system, which has been really valuable for us to have to share information. When we had the Access database before 2011, that's when we launched Fresh Start. We weren't sharing, the different departments weren't sharing the amount of information that we share now. So if Bobby's having a problem, I can look up Bobby and know that, like, well, he's having a problem because, you know, he just found out his mom has cancer. I can read that in his progress notes, or I can find out that he's been having a lot of medical appointments and his foot's been a problem all along and he's, you know, worried. I don't know. So you can see, so it's our residents that are putting in all of this information.
What numbers and stats do your donors like to see?
So basically so a lot of the donors, like the community foundations, they're interested in the outputs. They want to know, well, how many people from my county did you help? How many graduated? What are their wage? They want to see, are they making more money now than they made before? They want to know, like, how many people got their GEDs from their county? Yeah, so a lot of the stuff I reviewed is I'm chugging those numbers, not only for internal interest, but because of funder interest.
And can I ask you, Joseph, you made a strong indictment about output data. There is a place for that, right?
Yeah. The reason to measure, I mean, there's a difference in social science between dependent measures and independent measures. The dependent are the things you care about, the stuff you're trying to produce. The independent are the ones that you think are affecting those. And you want to test whether they're affecting them. So gathering some of those output numbers and seeing whether people getting GEDs or people getting a car or people getting whatever it is actually translates to DCE, to drug-free, crime-free, and employed. Those are the things that you're trying to test over time. So you can drop the stuff that doesn't really help and then reinforce the stuff that does. I want to answer the what donors care about question because, you know, Tim and Dave and Kathy and I are in that world a lot too. There are two different kinds of stories that they want to hear, and they want short, sweet, clear, credible numbers for these two stories. One is, do you change lives? And that's DCE. You show them a cluttered up chart like this that's good for us to set internal policy, and they're going to phase out on you. What they want to know is how many people walk through the door and how many people have a changed life. And so that's simple and clear. The second thing they want is leverage numbers. So our high net worth donors, people that really are interested in, is the organization running well? We recently went to a group called 100 Women Who Care. It's a collective giving group. And they gave us, I think just a few months after we started, $10,000 to help purchase our first moving truck. When we went back to them and said, in the last 5 years, that moving truck has generated $7 million in revenue, they got really happy. And they wanted to give more money. So they gave a significantly larger grant the next time. So when people can see that the money they're putting in is leading to a sustainable type of operation, what tends to happen is they fish deeper into their pocket because they know you're not going to invite them to a gala every year to try to get sustaining funding and operational funds. So always, always, always make a self-reliance argument and show them how their money is going to be leveraged by student revenues, by self-reliance, and those other angles.
I just wanted to make a comment as well. A lot of the output data, so the statistical data, it helps us to look back at what we're doing long-term and what our program looks like internally as well as externally. So my example is I get a lot of questions about inclusivity, diversity, accessibility. And the Utah incarceration system, like many of your states, heavily skews, the incarcerated individuals are heavily skewed African American and Hispanic, where our population in Utah has far less statistically, right, that are not incarcerated. So what that tells us, we'll look at that data and go, what can we do when we're interviewing in the prisons? What can we do to help people see that this is a space for them, that we are them? You know, we have students that are of color come and feel like this is a safe place, that you can relate to someone that has been through not just the substance abuse piece, but the racial experiences that you've had in our community. So we use that output data to look internally as much as we do to provide data to funders and to other interested parties.
I will say that I also am often questioning, do we actually really know that? Because a lot of our folks, a lot of our staff will say, young people leave soon. Like young people don't stay. And I'll say, do we really? Like, everyone loves to know everything. And I think before you make actual policy changes in your program, you need to see if you actually know that or if that's actually happening. So at the last summit, we had a discussion about dating. We talked a lot about I think it was maybe a whole workshop or section on dating. And there was this whole talk about whether we should allow dating while in the program. And people were saying, well, people just couple up and then leave. And I was like, but do they? I don't know. Because I think you remember Billy and Susie, who coupled up and then left, and it was really dramatic and interesting and juicy, right? But you don't remember Jane and Bob, who got together and then graduated and became staff members, like Herb and his wife. Like the things that go wrong are real saucy and exciting, and we make those the stories. But
Well, let's talk about those. Herb, come on up.
He's not interesting. We don't talk about him. No, but when I actually looked it up, it actually was people that dated stayed. Why? Because you have to have a year in the program to date. So you've already kind of, in that chart, you've already made it a year, right? So you're probably gonna stay. Also, you follow the procedures to date. So you're a rule follower. You're gonna stay. So what I actually found is people that date are kind of in it to win it. So I was like, why would we change? So we had staff members that were on track to change our dating policies based on the saucy, exciting 2 stories and not. Well, here I am. I have the mic, so I'm just giving you the data and the facts, in my opinion, on dating.
But you're making a larger point that's not about dating.
Right.
The point is, if you don't have data to settle the argument, you'll set a bad policy and you'll do it based on gut feel. Yeah. Bad idea.
Exactly. Thank you. That was the point I'm trying to make. I'm glad yeah. Anyone question?
Can I say one more thing? I also think it's what our data does, and everyone's data here, and this is something that Joseph talked about, is that your data shapes what people that don't have this experience look at addiction, look at change. Can you change your life? What does it look like? And when I worked at another nonprofit, it looked like people relapsed 6 and 7 times, and that was totally fine. And that's the volume of information out there, because TCs are relatively few in number compared to his regular rehabs. That's what is shaping what squares like me think about what rehab looks like and the impact and what life change looks like for someone that's been in addiction. If we're not as transparent as possible with our numbers, then we're just as guilty for not providing new shape to what it really looks like to change your life.
Got a comment here.
Thank you for that presentation. It's very encouraging to me to hear about how you're approaching the data situation. I have a suggestion, though, and stop me if you've heard it. It's been a number of years that we've had to deal with the technical issue of, do we report outcomes as success rates, which was the ideal outcome, no crime, no drugs, fully employed, and in the early research, because there was such a clinical investment in that outcome, that we were our own worst tyrannical observers of that. And that is, we wouldn't accept, even in programs, people thinking about using drugs or going back to the street. We were tough on one another in that respect. And so the first outcome criteria, no drugs, no crime, fully employed, as the hard behavioral measures of outcome, it became the standard outcome approach. That's the way you measured outcomes. So then you finally get these rates, success rates, based on combinations of those variables, those 3 variables. What they didn't measure was a concept that early on I began to see was going to be extremely important for policy, which is improvement rates. And that is the therapeutic community a cost-effective approach And if so, what's your data to really show it's cost effective? Now, if you only go to the graduates, who only 25 to 30% graduate, even though you've got very, very impressive data, incident numbers look exactly the same as they did 60 years ago. Those are the same percentages. But the argument back then was, from our some of our critics, was, what, you only have a 20-25% graduation rate, so how much impact are you producing? Which essentially led to myself and some other workers beginning to say we needed actually meaningful measures of improvement. But we wanted to keep it simple. There is one series of papers that you might look at, which is called Success and Improvement 5 Years After Treatment. I hope if you haven't seen it, look it up in the literature. And all it was looking at also all the dropouts, not only the graduates, but the dropouts, because dropout is the rule, right? And that's why we have the dose function, which we published very early. But not only that, when you ask the question of within time and program itself, 4 months, 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, and look at just the 3 criterion variables in terms of no drug use, no crime, and fully employed, and look at a differential score, which is what was their classification pre-treatment? They were all at 100% zero, so to speak. And then ask, what did a 5-month resident who left, what did they look like in terms of those 3 variables together? What was their success rate, if you look at it that way? You had a measure of improvement. You can say then improvement rates, of course, exceed success rates. And then you can also begin computing a cost effective based on that. If you were here 7 months and you had a 30% change in some outcome variable, you can translate that into a dollar advance in terms of social benefit.
So we have a very huge barrier on being able to contact people that leave early.
I know.
So what we did was, we wanted to do data on just anybody that we've touched. And we did start a project with a third-party researcher to look at, what we could do was look at court data, so that we wouldn't have to hunt people down and try to contact them. And what we did find, there were problems that we ran into. The data basically got kind of messed up, but what we were able to learn from it was that any time at TROSA was better than no time at TROSA. And the longer you were at TROSA, the better you
That's right.
you were. We need to launch that project again, and hopefully the data doesn't, but the biggest barrier is being able to contact people that just walk out the door.
All of the early follow-up studies, my own initially with Phoenix House and then several with some of the other major TCs, were all face-to-face follow-ups with corroborating data from agencies. And we considered that really be the kind of validity standard of what we were doing. Hair follicle samples. Well, hair follicle came in a little bit later. Let me pick this up. They came in a bit later, but urine samples and so on, and hair follicle samples, and then arrest records and so on. So but what we wanted absolutely was the face-to-face follow-up. So and of course our first big study, which made the difference at Phoenix House, was over 700 clients followed. 500 of them were dropouts, and that was deliberate in the sense that we knew they dropped out, and I wanted to try to answer the question, well, they might have dropped out, and how well are they really doing? They may not be successful, but how well are they really doing? It is essential in the future, and to amplify your commitment to measurement and data. We have to have that as our methodology. Don't simply count on all the external records. You have to have that because that's called corroborations, and we will do that. But you've got to get out there and see it for yourself. There's another very, very important clinical reason, and I won't take too much time on it, but this is the headline on this. Dropout and not being successful by the standards, and even showing small improvements, if any, does not mean that there's been a zero effect. It's not only the issue of cost benefit. It has to do with the recovery process itself, or the change process itself. There are people who come into treatment, stay there for 2 months, 3 months, leave, and then may even wind up in another treatment, stay there 4 months, 5 months, leave, we now know there's a mysterious but potent kind of incremental effect. Something is happening in each of those excursions. We often can't pin it down, but I did teach the staff when they were interviewing people who were coming into admissions, ask them what happened in their previous treatment experience, because you can get an idea exactly some of the pluses and minuses of that history and how to essentially incorporate it into understanding of the client. So it's not, when we get to the policymakers, we try to tell them, you don't exert the same stringent dismissive standards on cancer patients who are improving. You know, the issue is if people are improving, that's a tremendous human benefit as well as a cost benefit. But not only that, the argument is there is a whole subset of dropouts that ultimately incrementally wind up doing well because they go back in as multiple admissions in their history, and then you can see they're sticking for the last round.
Yes.
Which doesn't mean they didn't learn anything in the first several rounds.
Oh, yeah. We should not assume that the 75% that didn't graduate are back to their old ways, right? There's success in in those numbers too. Thank you so much. Oh, more questions.
So I have a question that comes out of the TOSA slide, and maybe you also have data on this, and maybe I misunderstood it, but I saw a 250% number there, and if I understood that correctly, then the success outcome for somebody walking in off the street is pretty bleak. If
Yeah.
I understood you right.
No, so the argument there was that you're 250% more likely to complete. And so that's only comparing to what is a pretty high attrition rate for people that walk in, no court supervision, no motivation other than I had a bad night last night sometimes, and they seem like they're interested in changing. So yeah, it's a bleak number for that population. It gets much, much better if they come in with some expectations. So you're right in assuming that the comparative number is small. And happy to dig into that data with you.
So is there any way to improve the outcomes for people walking in off the street?
The fact that you're asking that question supports the point that we need to be measuring, because that's what raises the question. That's what forces us to look at that and say, I don't like either of those numbers. How do we do a better job with people that don't have court supervision? How do we ensure that or support their motivation so that they make it through some of that tough period as well? Yeah, both of those are important conversations. And they both come out because we can see the number.
May I? Dr. DeLeon, I'd like you to respond to this. This has to do with the dating, but it's not the dating in itself. It's how I think deeply about the cause and effect, right? When you go into an organization where you know you can date as soon as you get there, and you have 100 men and 10 women, the women become the prey. Then what happens is whether or not he's dating somebody and successfully, fantastic, but I don't care about that number. What I care about, Dr. DeLeon, is when they come in and they start playing groups differently because they don't want to upset her, when they start trying to jockey for position, when there's only 10 women and 100 men, they become prey. And all the men and all the women have been doing that their entire lives. It becomes very unhealthy. Then when they get to the 1 year mark and we tell them, no, they can't date, the number you're not keeping is how many people leave because of that, but you can't keep that number because you don't know for sure if that's the reason. But when you live here and you see that happening like we did in Delancey Street, that's why we stopped it, right? Until you were there for 3 or 4 years. You could later on. But those are the things we have to think deeply about, not whether or not he gets to date it a year and stays. What impact does it have on those that we say no to because we don't think they're ready for it, and then they end up leaving because they're not getting what they want?
I think we're on the same page in that I thought, well, if we're going to change the dating policy, let's look at what the dating the outcomes of the dating policy are. And what we found out was that wasn't the problem, right? Like the problem is also two people having sex in the warehouse, not the people that went through the proper process of applying to date, right? So you learn that you're looking at the wrong thing when you look at the data. But you were gonna.
Yeah, the question was, as I lay that out in your experience in the TC model for the past 60 years, how important is that piece, right? That when you come in someplace and you know it doesn't exist, then you show up differently than if you know that it does. And here's my carrot when I get to day 365, I get her.
It's a profound issue. You know, you probably remember in the early days, from 1966 to almost 1990, the whole dating issue was a strict moratorium policy. And that is, the whole idea was really nothing for 9 months, maybe in some cases a year, before you can even consider the issue of some kind of a, in quotes, romantic relationship among residents. And it was an upfront policy situation. And knowing that it's crude when you do it that way, because it's not handling every individual case, it's not handling the possibility of fallout, but the moratorium policy was powerful, because if you follow that up with the right seminars, it runs deep. It has to do with the issues of, it's not simply trying to control your behavior, but essentially this whole issue of turning back and focusing on yourself and your own change, your own recovery, managing your own impulses in this way is all central to long-term change. So it has to be followed up with some sense of why we do it. And of course, the fundamental reason we do it is because it's community rupture. You can't have it. It's just the early acting out in any way, we know that sexually is a threat to the community also. And so there's the issues. It's the threats to the individual's own recovery, but then there's threats to the community. That's why we have rules. Rules have all to do with community. Expectations have to do with essentially treatment. So the issue then was no acting out, no dating, nothing romantic in that respect. And you may have 1 or 2 casualties, as you may talk about. They're going to walk on that, but it was essentially a good safety approach. It finally began fading after a while for a variety of reasons that we can't talk about now. But does that help your? Go
ahead. I just kind of wanted to go back to your question, because we've talked a lot about why we're collecting data to raise funds so that we can save more lives, but we really haven't talked a lot about the internal. We brushed on it a little bit, but when we found that statistic about people being more likely to complete if they had a sentence hanging over their head, thank you, good feedback. If somebody had a sentence hanging over their head, it gets the juices flowing inside the academy, because yes, we took this data and we started talking to judges, we started talking to prosecuting attorneys, and listen, you guys are letting people out where it doesn't help them to keep the consequences from them. That little amount of time that you keep them on probation could be the amount of time that they need in a TC in order to live a better life. Because if we're already operating off of this idea that longer is better and the chances are higher, if we can force somebody, literally force them to stay longer, it's better for them long term. And another thing that was discussed, especially with some of these new students, is connecting them to some of these consequences that are not criminal. Early on, you get them to connect. You're going to lose your family. You're going to lose your kids, because it doesn't have to be motivation coming from a court obligation. If you can really connect some of these early students to what they're going to lose, what they have lost, it's enough of a motivator to keep them around longer.
All right, thank you.
I had one question for her, which is, either data being shared with academic institutions? Are they requesting it, using it?
We've actually had really bad luck with working with academic. We've had really bad luck with working with academic institutions with our data because they don't understand it. They don't have the institutional knowledge of a TC, of TROSA. So we've gotten some really bad information from them. I worked with one researcher, I guess about 2 years ago, and he presented about how well the people in our program that were using benzos were doing. And I had to raise my hand and say, we don't have people using benzos in our program. And he said, yeah, you did. I have it in your data. And it was that people that reported abusing benzos before they came to TROSA, and he interpreted it as them taking it while they were in rehab. So we've had lots of partnerships with Duke University, because that's our local school. We partner a lot with UNC. We have a lot of luck in other arenas in our partnerships, but the data partnership has never been a good one.
All right, I want to let's give a hand for our presenters. We're going to roll right into our next session, and then we'll have lunch at noon. We're going to split this into two different parts. The first part is going to say, how do you handle bad news and work with your residents, your students? How do you help deal with catastrophic news that they're facing? And then the second part, I'll talk about how to handle catastrophic news from a PR standpoint with the public. So we'll first turn it over to Jeff. Do you want this or a handheld?
Here we go. I would like to say that from the last summit, all this talk of data, we went to our university and had a group come, and this is off topic, but they came and did a whole class with 10 of our staff on data analytics, and it has really changed the culture of our organization because now everybody is looking at what they can measure. We just finished it, I don't know, a couple months ago, so, and I would like to talk to you about your database. We're still using Access. It is, because we're in a transition right now, yeah. Okay, catastrophic news. I may have assumed something here. Maybe I was, okay. So anyway, how we deal with catastrophic news. This can be a very touchy situation. We have people that are trusting us to guide them from point A to point Z and improve their lives, and in a lot of cases, they don't have a lot of contact with the outside world. So what happens when something happens? Handling catastrophic news poorly can mean the difference between someone staying and someone throwing their hands up and running off and going, getting high. We give news for immediate family only. We get calls sometimes from people like, oh, our neighbor passed away. Believe it or not, I had a woman one time want to leave because her dog died. So these things can be pretty serious in the beginning when people are looking for any reason to give up and go back to doing what they were doing. So typically we're not going to be giving news about friends, neighbors, things like that. It's immediate family and sometimes extended family. We've learned through the years to not trust news from dubious sources. You know, a former drug user calls and says, oh, her mom is sick, or things like that. And wherever possible, we want to try and verify from a second source. As a result of years of experience with this, we do try to develop relationships with someone within the family, if possible, that we feel like we can trust so that we can get good information. When it happens, we want to get as much information as possible, and we want to be gentle. Through the years, we've had some pretty extreme responses. You need to be prepared when it comes to grief and death and illness and things. You really never know how people are going to respond. Everybody grieves differently. I just lost my mother recently, and people were kind of shocked that, like, wow, you're not freaking out. You know, you're handling it different than I would. Well, that's the case. People handle things very differently, but you need to be prepared for the worst case scenario. If the initial shock is historical, be prepared for an extended period of initial support. There was a point at Habilitat many years ago where they just kind of called you in the office and told you, oh, your mom died, and go talk to your peers, which I always thought was kind of cold and callous, and knew that we would do better. We could do better, so we developed protocols for that. When we do this, we prepare ourselves for a prolonged period of hysteria if that does occur, and we don't leave the room until they calm down. You need to have somebody that's skilled in crisis intervention, and typically somebody that's connected with that individual so that they will listen and they can make the connection. Some programs that I've been to and visited, like, they have a no contact policy. You can't physically touch one another or whatever. When things like this happen, it's been our experience that long, hard hugs are very helpful. Even I think if there are maybe rules against it, this would be the time that you would bend those rules to support someone. We typically try to offer them choices. Would you like to call now or would you like to call later? If they're in if somebody's in a hospital and is terminal, would you like to go to the hospital? We've learned through the years that these things often get better outcomes than if we try to not let them go. And we've had some of those things happen before, and it develops long-term resentments and distrust, which is something that's crucial to do the work that we do. We have to have counselor-client trust and a bond. Typically, we want to let the news sink in a little bit before we leave that room and before we move to the next step. When it comes to making a call, we make sure that all calls are monitored. We assign somebody we trust. Typically, that's going to be a staff member, and we're going to make the call. We're going to put the person on the phone and let them say whatever needs to be said. However, the clinical team or the staff team needs to know what was that call about and how did it go, what was the demeanor of the person, and how are they processing it. We also want to prepare the family before the call. We don't want to call and have the family say, oh, you need to leave there right now. And that has happened before. Ironically, they forget that if they leave, they may have to do 20 years in the penitentiary. So we want to make sure the family understands what we need from them so that we can work together to help this person through that. This is not something that we just do off the cuff or haphazardly. So we want to prepare them for the call, and we only want them to speak to the people that we have authorized them to speak with. Staff may and usually do follow up after the call in the days or sometimes weeks that follow, and then we inform them. Oftentimes you have a situation where maybe somebody has a terminal illness or whatever. You want to try and help them understand what that situation's like and what the prognosis is going to be like. Various scenarios. We allow people to go to supervised funeral attendance whenever possible. Obviously, being in Hawaii, if they come from the mainland US, it's a challenge to have somebody go back to the mainland. However, in some cases, we have actually done that. I have accompanied people back to the mainland to attend funeral services. Of course, it costs a lot of money for the families and whatever, but if it's important to them, and if it's the difference in someone going back to the penitentiary or not, then we're willing to go that extra mile to help support them, especially if the family is supportive. A lot of people find that a little unusual. I remember one New Year's Eve, I flew from Hawaii to Michigan to a funeral, didn't even own a long sleeve shirt at the time, and it was New Year's, it was cold. But we did what needed to be done because that's what needed to happen to help this individual in that circumstance. We will not allow people to go, there are some religious beliefs that require extended, weeks long of mourning and whatnot. That's disruptive to our program, so we don't really do that. We will usually allow supervised hospital visits if death seems imminent. Years prior, if you were younger in the program, we wouldn't allow people. I found that to not be really good for that client counselor bond. Anytime something happens with a life-threatening illness, we're going to consult. We have an RN that works on our staff. We're going to consult with the RN. We're going to do some research, and we're going to educate that person on whatever ailment that the person, the family member has. And we will continue to update where appropriate on their prognosis. I'm going to give you some extreme, real life examples here that really changed my mind about how we approach this. There's been a lot of talk about we evolve, we learn from what doesn't work, and we try to create a situation with better outcomes as we evolve. So we had a 1.5-year resident whose son hung himself, and the initial shock was extreme hysteria. It literally took us 3 hours to calm her down, wailing, hugging. The initial response is to just run. So we typically will have somebody between them and the door. Not that we would force them to stay there, but when they see that the door is not open and there's not an easy exit, they're less likely to run for the door. But it literally took us 3 hours to calm her down. We had a 6-month resident. This is a good one to learn from. The mom called to say that she had cancer. So naturally, we sat him down and said, "Oh, your mom has cancer." Well, we found out later that this was a secret signal for him to leave and come home. This had been prearranged ahead of time. We were on a 2-year program, 2.5-year program, and if you're not willing to commit to the whole term, we won't induct you into the program. So to get around that, they said, mommy said, "Well, you can go for 6 months, and when the 6 months is over, we'll call the staff and tell them that I have cancer, and that's your signal to come home." He called me a month or 2 after this happened, and he said, "My mom played you guys." So we learned from that lesson. But what do, right? We had a 2-year resident whose brother hung himself, and she was told, this was before my tenure, I would never allow this while I've been there, but she was told that she couldn't attend a funeral. Naturally, that created some very serious resentment. It's like 20 years later now, and she still resents the fact she wasn't allowed to go. And then the same woman, her father was terminal, and she was given a choice between going to the hospital or attending the funeral. There is no need to be this controlling and this callous. These are human beings, and when there's catastrophic news, this is really where we need to hold their hands. We need to be there for them, we need to nurture them, and we need to, in most cases, teach them how to go through the grieving process. This is an important thing for anybody that's running one of these programs, because we have people that, I like to tell people, our people are not stupid, they're intelligent, but they're not emotionally intelligent. And part of our job is to teach them the appropriate manner in which to deal with things when because it happens to everybody. How do we teach them how to navigate? How do we teach them a resourceful way to deal with things that life deals us? And a lot of times, I like to tell people at Abilitad, it's not how you deal with things on a good day. It's not that hard to figure out how to do that. Where the true test is where they have the resources to deal with things when they go completely wrong. And they do. We all know that. It happens in everybody's life. So it's our job to exemplify that, to hold their hand if necessary, to carry them when they can't walk for themselves, and to help them through those situations. And I can't express enough, these things happen. I'm sure they happen here as well. Handling it professionally and with empathy will encourage people to trust even more and trust in the process. Thank you.
Let's hold on 1 second. Jeff, any questions for Jeff on this?
Yes, sir.
When you have somebody in Hawaii that experiences a death in the family and it's an immediate family member and they live on the mainland, but they can't afford to get to the funeral, how do you handle that situation?
It depends. It depends on the individual. If they've been there a long time and we can always, if they've been there and they have the money in their savings, we might help supplement that. We would typically, unless they're a very senior resident, if they're a senior resident, we might let them go on their own if they're very stable. If they're in the middle, typically we're going to require somebody to go with them. And it would just depend on the circumstance. So we've done kind of a little of all of it. Is that kind of how it is here as well?
Yeah, it'd be sad if somebody lived in New York and their mom or dad died and they didn't have the funds to get there if we didn't try to get them there.
Right.
We have made exceptions for cases like that.
Right. And we have, people that come from other islands. Obviously, it's a little easier to do to other islands. And if it's something they can fly in the morning and fly out in the evening, then it's probably doable. But it just depends on the individual. Any other questions?
Good. Dave, I think it might be, if you want to mention the Academy's approach for people who've come through, who've OD'd or whether they've split early or graduated and then OD'd. How has the academy handled those and been involved?
So we've had to bury over the last 8 years, I think 6 people who have come through and graduated. One was a motorcycle accident, but he was already starting to lean into that old lifestyle. The others were overdoses. Well, actually 2 were motorcycles of one form or another. We contact the families or they contact us. We oftentimes help with the funeral expenses, especially if it is a graduate. We speak at the funerals. We are oftentimes pallbearers for them. We make sure that we show up for our graduates when that happens. They were part of our family while they were here. They're part of our family when they leave. And when that happens, we bring the whole house together and we let the entire house know what's happened. We are honest with our students about what transpired. We want to take that opportunity and use it as a teaching moment and then be there both for our former student and for their families. I think all 5 or 6, we have been there and in many cases helped significantly with the funeral expenses.
And to add to that, very similarly, we had the one person that we mentioned had overdosed and died. His family, he was a graduate, wanted to have the funeral at Habilitat. So we did. We had the funeral at Habilitat. We hired clergy. We went out onto our pier. His ashes were right on the ocean in Hawaii. And we had the service on our pier and our whole population attended. And it was certainly an eye-opening experience for the entire population, certainly. So I think we're in agreement with that.
Just interested with TROSA, anything that you would add to how you deal with catastrophic news for your residents?
No, go ahead.
I know in the virtual age it's come through. So if the family or if the resident was concerned about going home and being around family, if they use or whatever, we also offer a virtual, like the virtually attend the funeral or with the family. So that's been really helpful here.
Like a Zoom thing, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. De Leon would like a copy of your slides.
Oh, yes, certainly. Thank you, Jeff.
So we're going to transition from how do you deal with bad or catastrophic news with a student, and then how do you deal as an organization with catastrophic news from with the public if it becomes a public issue. And let me see if that comes up. Let me start off with a story that happened in 1968. So it happened about 30 miles from here in a place called Skull Valley, which is right next to the Dugway Proving Ground. And in the 60s, the US Army was doing nerve gas experiments as part of the Cold War, and the Soviets were doing nerve gas. And one day in Skull Valley, which is just on the edge of Dugway Proving Ground, the sheep herders came and they found initially 3,000 sheep laying on the ground with, twitching and suffering, and eventually over 6,000 sheep died. I know about this because my dad was working at the time in the Pentagon. He was press affairs. This is my dad, Jesse Stay, and he was director of public affairs for the Department of Defense. So they, as you can imagine, the Department of Defense had to deal with bad news often. My dad was sent out to Utah. We were living in Virginia at the time, sent out to Utah to try to manage the interaction with the public and the Pentagon and the military officers. And he came out and made a recommendation to the Army. And he didn't have control over what they said, but it was his job to say, here's how you should handle the situation. The Army said, we don't know that it was us. And he said, okay, you've got 3,000 sheep. They apparently have some kind of neurological doing. You were doing a nerve test the day before. Maybe you can find out what actually happened. They really didn't know at first why, because they said if nerve gas got on the sheep, they'd be dead. So why were they in this stage? And he said, but you need to admit that something terrible has happened, explain that we're still investigating, but we'll share the results when we find out. Say it may be us, that could be a possibility. We'll look into pesticides, whatever else may be happening. We should compensate the farmers and just get that, because there was an uproar saying, look, this is our livelihood, you've destroyed our livelihood, and then commit to share the findings when they find out. The Army rejected all of those findings, and to this day, the U.S. Army still has not admitted culpability in the death of 6,000. There were multiple studies done later that showed, they said, well, why are the sheep sick and not the cattle? And it turns out sheep eat snow and cattle don't. And so they had been doing a nerve gas test, trying to see droplet patterns through an aerial application. They went up into the cloud and the nozzle stuck, and part of that got in the cloud. It went across the mountain and it snowed on the next valley with some of those particles in there. That's what they found out later, but that was done by independent analysis. And again, and it became international news. The congressional hearings, the Army was castigated for lying, and eventually it led to, and this could be one good outcome to it, it came to an open air testing ban, and he ordered destruction. So the Army was trying to protect the program, but because of their actions, it actually killed the program. They were trying to put up a defense, put up walls, and not saying. So this is a extreme, and I'm not trying to advocate that the Army should have been doing it or whatever, but I'm just an example of, here's an organization that chose not to deal with something catastrophic. One of the things my dad said, and he was this kind of man, he had high integrity, and he said, I never lied to the press, I never lied to the media, and I would never advocate that in his job. He said, you just have to tell the truth. And I hear Dave say this all the time, and it resonates, because he says, it always comes out. You can't hide the lie. It only makes it worse. And so that's I want to lay that story out, because we sometimes face bad news, and often our tendency is, let's put up the walls, let's circle the wagons, and let's get defensive about things. And I would say that we can, if we don't handle this right, it can really provide damage to our organization. Some of the type bad news we might receive that might get coverage, a resident or graduate does something terrible out there in the public, and they get linked to us. Bad customer experiences, those are less minor, less catastrophic, but sometimes those can be, those can get, something happened on a move and it gets news, and inappropriate or illegal actions by staff. We saw the Reveal reporters take some bad actors and then condemn the whole industry because of some bad actions. Mismanagement or misappropriation of funds, criticism of our model, especially of our labor model. These are all things that we could see attacks on us or get bad news and could possibly bring harm to our organization. So here's some tips of how, if you're dealing with that. The first tip is prevention. What can you do beforehand? Having a culture of accountability and integrity is the best prevention. Being able to have really strong boundaries that you're known for, that people understand, ensure strict compliance with code of ethics among staff. I remember one of the first times at TROSA, we saw their whole fleet of cars and some guys out washing cars, and I remember Karen telling me we used to, they used to wash the staff cars as part of just washing the fleet cars. And then we realized, wait, that we're getting a benefit at the expense of the students. And they said, now if a staff wants their car, they have to pay to have their car washed. It's those little tiny things. As a staff, we should never be taking advantage or benefiting from the student's experience. And that's where you can get into trouble really quickly if, we get free tickets to events, to sporting events. It would be inappropriate to go just as staff to go to that. If it's done with the benefit of a student having that experience and staff goes to supervise, that's okay. But just have the staff taking advantage of the generous donations of our, so there's 100 little things that having the really clear boundaries avoids those problems. Being committed, this phrase that Joseph and Dave say all the time, be committed to truth over power. Allow those in leadership to be questioned and to be challenged and to get pull-ups and to be able to pass information on them. And then deal with minor issues so they don't become, these are all things that you can do beforehand. Or as prevention. Some things you can do in preparation, know who the spokesman for the organization is going to be. So if there's something and it's breaking news, rather than try to figure out who's going to be, know that, okay, if something catastrophic happens, who's going to stand up and speak for the organization? Let the phone operators, let the social media team know, hey, if something happens, we're going to direct all the calls here. We're going to direct all the inquiries here. Have a template of how to respond so you're prepared and not have many examples of success already on the website. It's too late if it's something catastrophic for you to say, "What? But wait, you got to see all the good we've done." Tell the story of all the good you've done and have it be widely known and accepted. It's too late to play catch up once it happens. Develop trusted relationships with local press, journalists, and reporters. Have them come over, have them understand what they're doing, have them understand how hard and that this is life and death, and have a few outsiders lined up who are willing to speak on your behalf. Tip 2, respond as soon as possible. Try to get out ahead of the story. If you have some of those trusted media, if you have supporters, get on the phone right away and say, hey, I want to let you know that this happened. You might see some stuff in the news. I want you to understand our view of it because it might get distorted differently, and give them the facts, help them understand. So when they hear it, they don't have their face shaken. They say, no, the story, you got the story wrong. Here's what really happened. They can help be your advocates in telling the story. If you don't control the narrative, someone else will. So be willing to step in and not build up those walls If you don't know the details, don't say no comment. Say, hey, we're trying to learn what happened just as it appears you are. I promise I'll get back to you once we know. Have a team prep to clarify erroneous information on the social media. Often inflammatory comments will come up. Some are just, trying to provoke reaction, but there are a lot of people who are just curious and they heard something wrong. Being able to clarify, well, here's what happened, here's why, here's the information. Do it in a factual, non-emotional way. Be transparent, don't lie. When the stuff hits the fan, lying or being defensive makes the fan go faster. And right beats spin every time. And I think it's important to be authentic. Being able to say, if you have, we're hurt, we're shocked, we're devastated. Be authentic. They're used to the corporate polished, being able to say, hey, there's someone we love, there's someone we cared about, there's someone, important to us, and we're devastated that this has happened. Take accountability, acknowledge the incident, accept and apologize, share how systems have broken down, share that it's an outlier. If if it's not an outlier, and if it's happening every time, maybe you need to look at what kind of system is allowing these type of things to happen. But generally, I think for a tight run ship and someone, they are generally outliers. Tell what you're going to do to make it right. Share that you're going to do something different. And Dave talked a little bit about this yesterday. Sometimes this is a chance to win people over. When you can tell them, say, hey, we're taking this serious, we're taking ownership, we're going to do something about it. People admire that. People understand that everything doesn't run perfectly. Share what you're going to change in the future and prevent that problem from happening in the future. And share how difficult this work is. Share that it's a life and death. You can share outcomes, but even better than you sharing it, and this leads to tip 7, having outsiders, having that trusted group that they can share and say, hey, I know the Other Side Academy. I know what they've done. Can I let you know that 77%, that if they can rattle off, they're even better defenders of us than us trying to defend ourselves. And so having outsiders speak in your behalf, having them lined up, be willing to do that for us. This is a painful experience that we had, and I hope it's okay with Lola and Steve that I share this about Guy. Is that okay? We had one of our staff members OD in one of our staff apartments, and he was well known among the group of supporters, and it couldn't be something that we just kept internally. We had to reach out to our supporters and let them know. So this was the letter that we sent out to them. We called a few of them personally to make sure, but I want to, as I read through this, see if we hit some of those points that we made. Dear friends, it is with great sadness that we inform you that Guy Nelson, one of our newest staff members, died alone in the morning hours of an overdose in his staff apartment. Guy had passed a random drug test just the day before and had not had any signs of using. Drug test results for the rest of the staff, as well as the students, have all come back clean. All evidence points to this being an isolated event. We don't know why Guy chose to make this deadly choice. We suspect that the recent painful events in his life overwhelmed him. In the past few months, 2 of Guy's brothers unexpectedly and tragically died, and last weekend, Guy attended the funeral of his father. Rather than reach out and use the tools he gained at the Other Side Academy and ask help for our community, he kept his pain and demons hidden. We then talked about some of the actions that we've done to bring the community together to deal with the staff, with the students. Our Denver family has banded together as a result of this tragedy, and each student and staff promised each other that they would not let Guy's choice lead them to make to their own disastrous choices going forward, but they would watch out and take care of each other through this period of mourning. Each day, over 130 people die of an opioid overdose here in the U.S. That's over 50,000 people who die because of this deadly scourge. We are engaged in a war to save lives, and this Saturday, one of our own lost to this war. Being able to share this with our supporters, rather than being critical, rather than be worried, we got such a greater outpouring of support and dedication and devotion and commitment. And allow yourself to share your honest opinions. We loved Guy. It was tragic. We were angry with him. Why didn't he use the tools that he had learned? But being able to do that, handling these situations, and we'll all face them in one form or the other, can really be impactful and help protect our organizations from further harm. I want to see if there's any questions that we have for this part. Yes. We'll bring you a microphone because we're getting it recorded.
So I'm just wondering, just with the past history of TCs not really having the best reputation. So let's say you do have a TC, maybe there were some structural issues that the media got hold of, and shit hit the fan. You've gone, you fixed those structural issues. How do you regain your reputation with the public? Like, what would your strategy be for that, communications and media wise?
Yeah, I think one, you really have had to make those structural changes, and it really, there are some, just like any organization, there have been some bad actors in the TC world, in any field, and that's part of the price all of us have to pay of saying we're different, and here's how we're different, and here's how we're preventing us from being like a Synanon or like some of the others that Dr. De Leon talked about, that some of them have made that. And so I think trying to show really clearly what you're doing differently so that doesn't happen. When we talk about Synanon, they were a closed environment. The community became more important than the individual. There was no check and balance on the power of the leadership. It had those elements of what a cult, what you would define as a cult. And so being able to say, okay, we have independent checks and balances, we have on the leadership, we have transparency, we allow the community to be part, high visibility. We're doing, audited financials, all the things that you can do to say, okay, we're good actors in the community, and we're allowing people to look closely at us rather than isolating us separate. I don't know if that's answering your question, but.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, we're just looking at starting a TC, so I'm kind of thinking like very far ahead should anything happen.
Yeah. Joseph?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. Tim had a category on prevention, and I believe the best prevention against negative public opinion when events like this inevitably occur is the right selection of a social enterprise. That if you select a social enterprise that gives you frequent, intimate contact with different members in the community in high volumes, you'll have a reservoir of trust out there that inoculates you against negative opinion when the time comes. So, you know, that's something we often wouldn't think of when selecting one, and we'll often pick a farm that's far distant, or, you know, even construction that some of us do. But if it's too few jobs with too few people, you're missing the chance to broaden the population that you're building trust with.
Yes.
Did you make any changes in light of the tragic death overdose?
Do you want to answer that, Joseph?
We are more rigorous about drug testing. I think we're a little bit more alert about it. We already had been pretty good, so it was really tightening up a little bit. But by and large, there wasn't a lot that we could have done in addition. Trust us, you know, many of us continue to have sleepless nights and recall that and try to examine ourselves to say, is there a policy and not an overreaction that we can do? And you should.
One of the things that, not from this incident, but from others, we've had a number of staff members go in for oral surgery or some other medical procedure. And we found we have to be much more involved in their lives going through their recovery process than we ever would be in a normal business. And that's part of our policy. If you're going to get some medical procedure, you're going to have to disclose that to us. We're going to have to be aware of what medications you're taking, because we've seen a couple of our staff members struggle with, okay, now I'm on heavy pain meds, and how do I appropriately handle life while I'm in recovery? And we do it because we care and love about them, and we want to be there. Not that we're trying to be intrusive and violate their privacy, but that's something we've talked about to keep everyone safe. Here's what we think we need to do. Dave?
I think one of the greatest and the best ways to mitigate a catastrophe is to be proactive. What I mean by that is many people operate in a silo. They are by themselves. When Joseph and Tim, myself, and our leadership team approached Mayor Mendenhall to talk to her about the village, she listened to our offer and said, give me a little bit of time. And when she got back to us, she said, yes, I'm all in, only because it's you guys. I talk to Tim and Joseph about this all the time, and my staff, that it's one thing as an organization to be liked. It's another thing as an organization to be trusted. Building that trust is difficult. From all of our leadership, from Lola and Steve to Robin, myself, Tim and Joseph, we're all on boards all over the community. We're doing public outreach all over the community, all the fairs, the overdose fairs, the recovery fairs, every single opportunity we get to be in the community, we are there. It is tiresome, but building those relationships, then when something happens, they know who we are. They love us and they trust us because we are a part of the community and we are making a difference. If you are not a part of your community where you're going to create the community you're now wanting to create, you've got to build that in, because that's how you mitigate those catastrophes, is you have to be proactive.
We've got a question up here.
It is tough to tell a parent that their child's died. It's tough to talk to a community that just had a tornado come through. You have 52 dead, over 1,000 injured. You have people that are looking at you going, what are we doing next? In our business right now, most folks think the same, having this prepared plan may not be an issue, but when you look at who's in our facilities and the disruptive behaviors that they've had when they came, the relationships that they had, some of their friends, we could very easily find ourselves in a situation where if we're not directly involved, the perception's going to be there was involvement. We have a written policy. We have a written policy as to who can respond, who has the immediate response. We do not put individuals up. We put united fronts up. And you know, how you're going to answer the other question is for many of you that are in the moving business, how are you going to respond when one of your trucks T-bones somebody and kills them? Your lawyer is going to be asking you not to make any admissions that will become liability and cost you on the other side. So there needs to be a plan. There needs to be training. You need to be hell-boarded to where somebody just starts hitting you with questions. Or being ready in an average. I just had an interview recently where we were talking about the Phoenix House, and all of a sudden the question comes up: well, why is there such a low number of African Americans in the facility? But you know, you just have to be prepared for that, and answer it as openly as you can. But policy training and ensuring that the people that are going to make statements on behalf of your entity have gone through the hell boarding is what we call it, to be able to answer those types of questions.
All right, do we have another question, Jeff?
So, along the lines of what Dave said, we had a land dispute a few years ago where the state was basically trying to claim part of our land, and we hired a high dollar attorney, the best in the state, and we're preparing for a prolonged battle with the state of Hawaii. And I got some of the best lawyer advice I think I've ever gotten. He sat me down and he said, you know, who do you know? And I explained that I knew one of the state senators, and he said, well, let me tell you this, a state senator is worth 10 lawyers. And I called the senator, he made a phone call, and the problem went away. So hearing what I'm hearing here, and after watching some of the challenges that it was, no, he called and he told him, leave Habilitat alone, you know? So having powerful government officials behind your cause is extremely powerful. It's very, very important. And I learned this from watching some of you go through your challenges when you first opened, and all the stuff in Denver and the stuff I've heard about the village. And I think that's why these summits are so important, because we come and we listen and we learn and we develop better approaches to things. And now the senator has helped us on several occasions. And likewise, whenever he needs something, recently we had the horrible fires on Maui. He called us and he said, we need volunteers. I loaded up the trucks and sent an army down there and fed everybody. And, you know, so really back to the topic, dealing with these catastrophic things often boils down to relationships. And who's going to champion your cause and who's going to deliver the message, much like what you said. So I can't stress enough about cultivating relationships with important people who have their fingers in different things, and nothing dark about that. Just, you know, make friends with people that can champion your cause, that have, you know, they have power in different areas of government or community or whatever. It has been very, very helpful to us on numerous occasions. And I learned that from attending these summits, so.
Concerning liability forms, like when applicants come in, are they required to fill out liability forms? And did that also go to beyond to the family members? So if something does happen, are you protected from a family member coming back and saying, you know, that there could be a potential lawsuit?
Yeah, well, I think all of us have extensive intake forms that cover liability and releases and permissions and things. And if something were to happen, I'm sure we'd be happy to share those with families. I want to see in our last few minutes, any words that you wanted to give, Dr. DeLeo?
Section?
Yeah.
No, I think it's a terrific discussion, and I'm learning a few things as I listen to this.
Okay.
So I don't have much to add except keep doing it.
Let's go ahead and break. We'll have lunch right at 12, so you have a few minutes before lunch happens, and Kathy's got some announcements.
We went through the list of who's staying here for breakthroughs and who's going to Red Barn. I have a list here. If your name is in pink, you'll be going to breakthroughs here. So we have about 26 people staying here for breakthroughs, and everyone else we have rides for to get you up to Red Barn to go through the tour and have dinner there and then return back. So please check this list. Thanks. Not necessarily. We had 60 people sign up to stay for breakthroughs, so we had to kind of shift things around. Okay.
But if they originally signed up for Red Barn, they're still going to Red Barn.
Yeah. Yep.